I walked into the boss's office and laid it all out. "I want to sell a kidney," I said. Then I added, "Oh, and my corneas, too." It was early morning at the underground black market. I wore a mask that covered half my face as I walked through the narrow, damp corridor. I knew this place well. I climbed onto the filthy, makeshift operating table and lay down. The boss, a man who had spent his life dealing in human organs, looked at me with a complicated expression. "Kid," he whispered, "are you sure about this?" He rattled off my history from just the last 6 months. I had already sold 1 kidney, a patch of skin, my gallbladder, both testicles, a segment of my coronary artery, a third of my liver, and parts of both my small and large intestines. "If you sell your last kidney, you won't live 2 days," he warned. Even a cold-hearted organ trafficker like him was shaken. He had never seen anyone dismantle themselves like this. It was pure madness. "I'm sure," I said, forcing a pair of hot tears to stream down my face. "To save my sick sister, anything is worth it." The boss nodded. He wasn't a saint. A young, healthy kidney could fetch hundreds of thousands on the market if the match was right. He was only paying me $30,000. As for the corneas, they were priceless treasures to the blind. The surgery started immediately. There was no anesthesia and no disinfection. I felt every bit of the agonizing pain as my last kidney was sliced out, followed by my corneas. I gritted my teeth, grabbed the 30,000 yuan, and stumbled out into the darkness. I was blind now, but I had memorized every turn of the black market's alleys. I twisted through the maze, making sure no one was following me. Only when I was safe did I let out a long breath. With a single thought, I felt the familiar warmth. Inside my body, the missing organs began to knit back together. My vision cleared as 2 brand new eyes formed in their sockets, sparkling with light. With the money from before and this 30,000, I finally have enough for the awakening fee, I muttered to myself. The story about a sick sister was a total lie. I was a transmigrator. When I arrived in this world, I had the classic protagonist set up. I was a complete orphan. This world looked like Earth, but it was massive, crawling with demons, monsters, and deadly hidden realms. At first, I was terrified I wouldn't survive a week. Then I discovered my secret. I was immortal. As long as I willed it, any injury, no matter how fatal, would heal in minutes. Missing limbs and organs simply grew back. I didn't tell a soul. I stayed low-key, going nowhere but school. In this world, people could use awakening altars to become powerful professionals. I had immortality, but I had no combat power yet. I was like a treasure everyone wanted to steal. If the world found out I couldn't die, they'd lock me in a lab and slice me up for study forever. Becoming a professional was the only way to protect myself, but it was incredibly expensive. The registration fee for the awakening ceremony alone was 100,000 yuan. Tomorrow was the big day. Selling my organs was the only way an orphan like me could get that kind of cash fast. The black market didn't keep records, so my secret was safe. The next morning, I arrived at school early. I needed to become a powerful professional to truly be free. I paid the fee and quietly moved to the back of the line. I was used to being the loner, the poor kid who never spoke. "Yilin, why are you here?" My homeroom teacher looked at me in shock. To her, a poor student like me shouldn't have been able to afford this. Then, her expression shifted to pity. "Did you take out a professional loan?" I just nodded. If she wanted to invent an excuse for me, I'd take it. The class started whispering, looking at me with sympathy. A professional loan was a massive gamble. If you awakened a powerful class, you were set. If you got a trash class, the high interest rates would turn you into a debt slave for the rest of your life. "Just do your best," the teacher sighed. She clearly didn't think I'd make it. In her eyes, an orphan should have just taken the normal college entrance exam. Even if I succeeded, I couldn't afford the resources needed to level up. The ceremony began, and the crowd's attention shifted away from me. To them, I was just a clown dreaming of a miracle. The principal of Qingqing High School personally presided over the altar. Life class, grade A, poultry breeder. The student on the altar turned pale. He had seen the black light of a grade A rank and got excited, only to realize it was a non-combat role. Classes were ranked from F to SSS. Combat roles were the best, support was second, and life classes were the bottom of the barrel. Don't be discouraged, the principal said. There are no useless classes, only useless people. Remember the poultry breeder who raised a chaos chicken king that terrified combat experts? The students' eyes regained a bit of hope, but the principal's brow furrowed. The results so far were mediocre. Out of 100 students, the highest was that grade A breeder. Next, the principal called out, his voice tinged with impatience. Suddenly, a flaming red phoenix soared from the altar, piercing the sky. A wave of intense heat rolled over the crowd, singing the hair of the students in the front row. The smell of burnt protein filled the air. An SSS class? The principal's breath hitched. Grade A was black light. S was red. SS was gold. But SSS created a vision of heaven and earth. Whether it was combat, support, or life, an SSS rank changed everything. Qingcheng High School had finally produced a true dragon. Everyone's eyes locked onto the altar. There stood a tall figure, her curves visible even through the loose school uniform. This was the birth of a legend. A massive fire phoenix danced above Zhu Guni's head. The principal was shaking with excitement. An SSS class fire mage. Even if every other student in the school awakened a useless grade F life class, he wouldn't care. A single Zhu Guni was worth 10,000 soldiers. I stood in the crowd, watching the other students burn with envy. Talent like that was terrifying. If Zhu Guni decided to punch the principal in the face right now, the old man would probably just smile and praise his technique. Student Zhu Gu, come with me, the principal said, his face wrinkling into a smile like a blooming chrysanthemum. I have matters to discuss with you. He turned to the teacher nearby. Teacher Wang, take over the ceremony for me. The principal led Zhu Guni away without a second glance at the rest of us. To him, we were just background noise compared to a genius. Next, Yilin, Teacher Wang called out. I took a deep breath and stepped out from the crowd. All eyes landed on me, but they weren't filled with admiration. They were filled with mockery and pity. Everyone knew my situation. I was a poor orphan who had to take out a loan just to afford the awakening ceremony. To make matters worse, I was following right after an SSS class legend. Even if I managed to awaken a grade A or S class, I would still look like a failure next to her. I ignored the whispers and stepped onto the altar. I was curious myself. What kind of path would fate choose for me? Teacher Wang activated the altar. A strange, warm energy flooded my body. It felt peaceful for a split second. Then, the world went dark. The bright morning sky vanished. Thick, suffocating black clouds swirled above the school like the end of the world was arriving. Lightning cracked. Pillars of heavenly fire rained down. Gale winds roared, and weak water surged from the void. It looked like a scene from the apocalypse. The students froze. Some turned pale, their knees buckling in fear. Another vision? Teacher Wang gasped. Her heart looked like it was about to stop. 2 SSS class awakenings in one day. She looked like she thought she was losing her mind. The principal, who had been halfway across the courtyard, skidded to a halt. He sprinted back toward the altar, his eyes burning with greed. Another SSS class? And this one was Yilin? It was a miracle for Qingcheng High School. Even Zhu Gu and I paused, her beautiful eyes locking onto me. She only cared about people who could stand on her level. The crowd's mood shifted instantly. The envy turned into bitter resentment. They could accept Zhu Gu and I being a genius. She was rich and beautiful. But me? A poor kid who needed a loan? It was too much for them to handle. Nothing stings more than seeing someone you look down on suddenly soar above you. The principal didn't care about their feelings. He saw a gold mine. An orphan with no background and an SSS class rank was the perfect target for investment. If he helped me now while I was weak, I'd be indebted to him forever. Quick, Teacher Wang, the principal shouted, his voice dripping with newfound kindness. Check her class. What is it? Teacher Wang shook off her shock and checked the interface. Her jaw dropped. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Yilin, combat class, SSS rank. Forbidden curse master, she stammered. The principal started to cheer. Good. Excellent. Today you honor the school, and tomorrow, he stopped mid-sentence. His face turned ashen, looking like he'd been forced to swallow something disgusting. Wait, a forbidden curse master. In this world, SSS rank usually meant godhood. But there was one exception everyone dreaded. The Forbidden Curse Master was the strongest class in existence, capable of crushing anyone in their tier. If I fought Zhugu and I would beat her like a child. The problem wasn't the power. It was the cost. Every skill a Forbidden Curse Master used demanded a sacrifice. You didn't pay with mana. You paid with your life. You paid with your years, your organs, or your limbs. The most powerful spells required total self-immolation. People called them suicide trucks. Not a single one in history had lived past the age of 25. If your enemy was a Forbidden Curse Master, you didn't even have to fight them. You just had to wait for them to cast a few spells and die on their own. The principal's warmth vanished instantly. He wasn't going to invest in a girl who might not outlive his 61-year-old self. Zhugu and I turned away, her interest evaporated. She didn't have time for a short-lived freak. Below the altar, the students started laughing. The tension broke into cruel jeers. An SSS Forbidden Curse Master? She's finished, one guy sneered. 2 spells and she'll be a cripple. Maybe she'll just stay a commoner to save her life, another laughed. Imagine that. An SSS rank commoner. That's a headline. Took out a loan for the Awakening. Now she has to loan out her life to use her skills. Perfect fit. The insults cut through the air like knives. I stood there on the altar, surrounded by the ruins of their short-lived respect, staring at the dark clouds still swirling above. I played the part perfectly. My face went pale, my head dropped, and I stumbled as I walked, looking like a person whose soul had just been crushed. But inside, I was struggling to keep a straight face. If I didn't keep my head down, I would have burst out laughing right there on the altar. The world thought a Forbidden Curse Master's skills cost their life. That was true for everyone else. But for me, I had an undying body. Sacrificing my life meant nothing when I could just get it back. I pulled up my status panel in my mind. Name, Yilin. Class, Forbidden Curse Master. Level, 10%. Strength, 10. Agility, 15. Spirit, 30. Talent, endless forbidden curses. The panel explained that I would unlock a new forbidden curse with every level I gained. I looked at my first skill, World-Ending Mad Thunder. The description was terrifying. To cast it, the user had to sacrifice a part of their own body. The more vital the organ or limb, the more powerful the lightning. At its peak, it could summon Chaos Divine Lightning. The damage scaled with my level and spirit, but the raw power of Chaos Lightning was the pinnacle of all elements. Most skills in this world were ranked as common, rare, epic, or legendary. Above legendary, there was a tier people called forbidden. For a normal mage, a forbidden curse was a final trump card, something they only used when they were backed into a corner and ready to die. For me, it was my basic attack. Better yet, my class had a hidden passive. Forbidden curses had 0 mana cost and 0 cooldown. As long as I had enough life to pay the price, I could spam Chaos Lightning like a machine gun. And since I had infinite life, I was a walking nuclear reactor. I could barely imagine how terrifying I'd be once I leveled up. I was a glitch in the system. A Forbidden Curse Master with no side effects was a god among men. I wanted to scream with joy, but I knew I had to keep playing the victim. A 3-year-old with a flamethrower is still a target. I needed to grow stronger before I showed my hand. I clenched my fists until they shook. I breathed heavily, my eyes turning bloodshot. I gave them the perfect performance of a genius who had fallen from grace. Old Kai, the principal, sighed. He looked at me with genuine pity. Yilin, don't be too discouraged. It's a powerful class. It's better to burn brightly for a moment than to live a mediocre life, right? I lifted my head slowly, my voice sounding raspy and broken. Principal, is it true? Do Forbidden Curse Masters really not live past 25? Old Kai hesitated, then nodded slowly. He didn't want to lie to me. But then, I saw a spark in his eyes. He was calculating. An SSS rank Fire Mage and an SSS rank Forbidden Curse Master in the same year? Our school's ranking in the national exam was about to skyrocket. If I was desperate enough to sacrifice a kidney or an arm during the trials, we'd sweep every other school in the city. Yilin, Zhugu and I, come with me to my office, he said, his voice buzzing with sudden excitement. Once we were inside, he looked at us with burning intensity. You two are the hope of Qingchen High School. Tomorrow's novice dungeon is crucial. I want you both to hit at least level 10. To make sure that happens, I'm giving you both permission to solo. Usually, combat classes had to bring supports into the dungeon to help them survive. Soloing meant all the experience went to one person, allowing for much faster leveling. I'm fine with that, Zhu Guanai said, frowning as she glanced at me. But what about Yilin? She probably thought I was crazy. Using a forbidden curse on a level 1 rabbit or a level 5 wolf would be like using a mountain leveling bomb to kill a mosquito. I'd be half dead before I even cleared the first floor. What do you suggest? The principal asked. Let him team up with me, she said coldly. I'll handle the low-level monsters. If we run into something I can't handle, he can step in. It'll be safer and more efficient. It was a logical plan, but I couldn't do it. If I stayed with her, I'd have to hide my power. I couldn't let anyone see me spamming forbidden spells without dying. Principal, I'll stick to soloing, I said, scratching my head like a shy kid. I've always preferred working alone. Zhu Guanai's expression turned icy. She was trying to do me a favor, and I had just thrown it back in her face. In her eyes, I was being stubborn and suicidal. Fine, she snapped, turning away. Have it your way. She clearly thought I'd come crawling back once I was missing a limb. She had no idea that tomorrow, the novice dungeon was going to witness something impossible. Fine, let's go with soloing then, the principal said, clapping his hands to finalize the decision. Student Zhu Gu, your plan is good, but going deep into a secret realm is always risky. He didn't actually care about me. He didn't care if soloing shortened my life or if I died young. All he cared about was the school's ranking and the graduation success rate. As long as I survived long enough to get a high score on the college entrance exam, it didn't matter if I dropped dead the next day. The principal reached into his desk and pulled out 2 rings, handing one to me and one to Zhu Guanai. I looked at mine. It was a heaven-made ring. No grade, no special skills. It gave a flat 10-point boost to spirit. It was a basic, bottom-tier item, but I took it silently. Even a piece of junk like this would cost 5,000 to 8,000 yuan in the shops, nearly a third of what a human kidney was worth on the black market. It reminded me how expensive being a class Awakened really was. Even the lowest level gear cost a fortune, let alone the legendary or epic items I'd seen online. This is a personal contribution from my own pocket, the principal said, looking at us with high expectations. Work hard. Try to hit level 10 before the exam. Thank you, principal. I'll do my best, I said. I stood up and walked out of the office. Outside, the awakening ceremony had ended. The playground was a mix of joy and tears. But as soon as the other students saw me, their expressions changed. Some of them actually started smiling. I realized then that human happiness is built on comparison. No matter how bad their own classes were, at least they weren't me. At least they weren't forbidden mages with a death sentence hanging over their heads. Comparing their lives to mine made them feel like they were doing just fine. Yilin. I was about to head home when Zhu Guanai called out. She caught up to me, her long legs carrying her quickly to my side. She tried to convince me one last time to team up, but I refused again. Her eyes flashed with anger. She had tried to help me twice, and I had ignored her twice. To her, I was just a stubborn fool who couldn't be saved. She turned away, deciding to let me face my own fate. Well, if it isn't our SSS-CLASS celebrity, Yilin. A mocking voice cut through the air. Jiling stepped out, leading a group of lackeys to block my path. He was the young master of the Qingqing Jishir group, a wealthy bully who had been chasing Zhu Guanai for years. Everyone in school knew he considered her his private property. Zhu Guanai looked like she wanted to chase him off, but then she stopped. She stayed silent, clearly wanting Jiling to teach me a lesson. She probably thought a good beating would make me realize that a forbidden mage couldn't survive without help. I looked at Jiling's cold stare and sighed. Women really were trouble. I had spent 3 years at this school without bothering anyone, and 2 sentences from Zhu Guanai had brought this guy to my door. Move, I said. I'm going home. Home? You mean that sewage-soaked slum you live in? Jiling sneered. Look, you're in SSS-CLASS now. Why don't you beg me? I might find you a job as a security guard at my family's company. I'll even throw in room and board so you don't have to live in the dirt. Aren't I great? His followers burst out laughing. Yilin, you're lucky. Quick, thank young Master G. Maybe give him a few kowtows while you're at it. I clenched my fists. My breathing became heavy. and I let my face twist into an expression of pure, humiliated rage. "Don't push me too far," I screamed. Jiling flinched for a second. He remembered I was technically a forbidden mage, but then his smug grin returned. He knew casting spells cost me my life. He didn't think I'd actually trade my lifespan just because of a few insults. "I'm just being kind, Yilin. How is this bullying?" Jiling reached out and lightly slapped my cheek. It didn't hurt, but the insult was massive. He was loving it. Even an SSS-CLASS had to crawl before him. I narrowed my eyes. I knew that if I backed down now, guys like him would never stop. I didn't need to be a rabbit. I needed to be a lion. My eyes turned bloodshot. "Jiling, you forced my hand. Forbidden curse, scorn of the mad thunder." I warred. I raised my hand toward the sky. Suddenly, the sun vanished behind thick, swirling black clouds. A violent thunderstorm gathered instantly, silver lightning snakes dancing in the dark. A bolt of thunder as thick as a man's thigh crashed down from the heavens, connecting directly with my palm. In that moment, I looked like a god of wrath. The students around us screamed in terror. They couldn't believe a level 1 awakened could summon this much power. I swung my hand down. The lightning slammed into the ground right next to Jiling. The explosion sent him flying, leaving a massive, smoking crater in the concrete. "Are you insane, Yilin?" Jiling shrieked, his voice cracking. He had almost met the Grim Reaper. He just wanted to bully me, but I was acting like a suicide bomber. If my aim had been just a few inches to the left, he'd be a pile of ash. I didn't answer him. I just raised my hand again. "Forbidden curse, scorn of the mad thunder." He's crazy. Yilin has lost it. Jiling scrambled backward, his face pale with terror. "Help me. Someone help me. Nobody wants to mess with a madman who's willing to die just to kill you." Jiling tried to stand, but his legs were like jelly. He begged his friends for help, but they were already halfway across the playground, running for their lives. "You cowards," he yelled. Boom. An even larger bolt of lightning struck the earth beside him. Jiling froze. A foul-smelling liquid began to leak down his pant leg. The terror of dancing on the edge of death was too much for his bladder to handle. He sat there, tears streaming down his face, thinking it was finally over. But then, another angry voice boomed across the field. I looked like a reaper of souls descending from the heavens, bathed in the glow of a world-ending storm. Jiling stared back at me, his eyes wide with a terror so deep it clawed at his throat, stealing his voice. He watched me standing there, draped in pillars of purple lightning, and only one thought remained in his shattered mind. Madman. This guy was a complete lunatic. You insult him a couple of times, and he responds by dropping 3 forbidden curses back to back. If that wasn't the definition of a psycho, I didn't know what was. Jiling was drowning in regret. If he could have taken a pill to undo the last 10 minutes, he would have stayed 800 meters away from me at all times. A forbidden curse user was scary, but a suicidal one? That was the most terrifying thing on the planet. "Yilin, stop this instant." A panicked voice boomed across the field. The principal was sprinting out of his office like his pants were on fire. I caught the movement out of the corner of my eye and let the lightning fade. I wasn't stupid enough to actually murder the son of the G family in front of 1,000 witnesses. I clenched my fists tight, making sure my face was deathly pale. I looked like a man who had been pushed to the brink and was now suffering the physical backlash of his own power. "Principal, I started, my voice trembling with feigned exhaustion. "Don't say a word. You don't need to explain." The principal snapped, his face flushed with rage. He had heard rumors about Jiling harassing people to get to Zhuge and I. In the past, he turned a blind eye to the bullying out of respect for the boy's father. But this was too much. Jiling had bullied a student so badly that the kid was willing to trade his life just to strike back. I was supposed to be the star of Chingcheng High School in the upcoming college entrance exams. If anything happened to me, the principal would probably skin Jiling alive himself. "Jiling, get up," the principal roared. "Now, apologize to Yilin immediately." The principal expected a fight. He thought the arrogant young master would refuse, giving him a chance to lecture him further. But before the words even finished hanging in the air, there was a loud thud. Jiling had dropped to his knees right in front of me. "Yilin, I was wrong. I really, Truly no, I was wrong, he blurted out, tears streaming. I'm sorry. Juga and I is yours. I won't fight you for her anymore. When his life was actually on the line, the kid folded like a paper crane. He was the sole heir to the Jishur group. He had a bright future ahead of him. He didn't want to go down in flames with a lunatic who had nothing to lose. The speed and sincerity of the apology even stunned the principal. He looked at Ji Lingyu like he was a body snatcher. Where was the kid who usually acted like he owned the world? Yilin, what do you think? The principal asked, feeling a bit awkward. I pressed my lips together, looking solemn. Principal, I accept his apology. Ji Lingyu, remember this. A man can be killed, but he cannot be humiliated. Yes, I understand. I'll never insult anyone again. Ji Lingyu nodded frantically. He was terrified I'd raise my hand and finish the job. Principal, I'll head home now, I said politely. I turned and walked away. My plan had worked perfectly. After today, nobody in this school, or even in this city, would dare mess with me. I had established my persona, a madman who would take you to the grave with him at the drop of a hat. Juga and I watched me leave with a complex expression. She shook her head slowly. No brains at all, she whispered to herself. To risk his life just because of a few insults, he's nothing but a brute. Someone like that won't last long, even with a SSS-class profession. In her mind, she had already written me off. We might have awakened the same rank of power on the same day, but we were from different worlds. She saw herself as a future goddess of the battlefield, while she expected me to be a pile of bones within 5 years due to my impulsive nature. I ignored the stares and walked back to my small shack in the slums. This was the poorest part of Qingcheng, filled with sewage and crime, but it was the perfect hiding spot for someone with an immortal body. I sat on my bed and began to calculate. Sacrificing 12 inches of intestine allowed me to summon standard lightning. Sacrificing a bladder summoned ghost water sound thunder. Sacrificing a heart summoned the life-death sub-thunder. These were the data points I'd gathered from my little experiment on Ji Lingyu. To keep people from getting suspicious, I only sacrificed internal organs. Based on my math, if I wanted to summon the ultimate chaos divine thunder, I'd probably have to sacrifice my heart and my entire physical form at once. No wonder they call it a forbidden curse, I muttered with a wry smile. Only someone like me, with an undying body, could play this game. A normal person would be a paraplegic after 2 casts. But the power was worth it. Even at level 1, if I went all out, no one under level 5 would survive. With a single thought, I triggered my regeneration. The organs I had sacrificed for the curse grew back instantly. The color returned to my face. I laid down and fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. While I slept like a baby, Ji Lingyu was having a breakdown. Dad, you have to get revenge for me, he wailed, sitting across from his father. You have to kill him. He embarrassed me in front of the whole school. I had to kneel. I can't let this go. His apology earlier had been sincere because he was scared. His desire to kill me now was just as sincere. The Jishur group employed plenty of high-level experts. Killing a level 1 kid like me should have been easy. His father, Ji Fu, sat behind a cloud of cigar smoke, his expression unreadable. If we kill him, we risk everything, Ji Fu said coldly. Offending a SSS-class forbidden curse user is suicide. If he survives and grows up, he'll drag our entire company to hell with him before he dies. Ji Lingyu flinched. Killing him for the sake of your pride is a high-risk, zero-reward move, Ji Fu continued. The people you bullied before were nobodies. This time is different. Do you understand? Ji Lingyu nodded obediently. I get it, Dad. I'll stay far away from him. No, Ji Fu said, a sharp glint in his eyes. You won't stay away. Quite the opposite. You're going to follow him. You're going to treat him like your leader. But Dad, why? Ji Lingyu stammered, his face pale with confusion. He humiliated me. He made me kneel. He's a lunatic who's willing to blow himself up over a few insults. He clearly has no brain. Ji Fu leaned back, a cold, calculating smile playing on his lips. Exactly. He has no brain, and he cares deeply about one thing, face. He's obsessed with his pride. Think about it. If the young master of the Jishur group becomes his follower, wouldn't that give him all the face in the world? My father-in-law to be, or rather, the man who controlled the city's wealth, continued with chilling logic. A real man knows when to bend and when to stand tall. If you become Yilin's lackey, he becomes your umbrella. If someone insults you, they're insulting him. For the small price of your pride, we get an SSS-CLASS Forbidden Curse user as a free bodyguard. People say Forbidden Curse users die young, but no one ever says they aren't strong. Ji Lingyu's eyes lit up. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. Dad, I get it now. Ji Fu nodded. He's obsessed with pride, and he's dirt poor. Remember those two things. Play your cards right, and you'll have the ultimate weapon on a leash. And if there's one thing the Ji family has plenty of, it's money. The next morning, I showed up at the school gates. The moment the other students saw me, they scrambled away, eyes wide with terror. News of my madness from the day before had clearly spread. I didn't mind. In fact, I preferred it. I had killed the chicken that was Ji Lingyu to scare the monkeys. The less people wanted to talk to me, the easier it was to hide my immortality. Yilin. I turned around, my hand already twitching toward my power. It was Ji Lingyu, running toward me. A cold light flickered in my eyes. Hadn't this pampered brat learned his lesson? If he was here to start trouble again, I wouldn't mind making him disappear once we entered the novice dungeon. Yilin, you haven't had breakfast yet, right? I brought this for you. He held out a beautifully crafted lunchbox and a bottle of fresh milk, looking like a loyal puppy. I stared at him, my suspicion peaking. You couldn't beat me, so now you're trying to poison me? No, no way. Ji Lingyu panicked. To prove his innocence, he ripped open the box, tore off a piece of a massive sandwich, and stuffed it into his mouth. Then he opened the milk and took a huge gulp. See? No poison. I swear. I took the box. The smell of fresh beef and toasted bread was incredible. I looked at the layers, high-quality ingredients, definitely safe. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Was this guy a masochist? Did he enjoy being threatened with total annihilation? Whatever. I was a guy who had to sell a kidney just to afford the awakening ceremony. I wasn't about to turn down a free gourmet meal. I started inhaling the sandwich. Seeing me eat, Ji Lingyu beamed. His father had taught him well. The first step to any relationship is breaking the ice. He clearly thought I was an idiot who could be bought with a sandwich. Yilin, he said, his voice dripping with fake emotion. I've spent my whole life just drifting along. But meeting you, it was like a bolt of lightning woke me up. I swallowed a mouthful of beef. It wasn't like lightning. I actually summoned lightning. Just get to the point. I want you to be my big brother, he blurted out. I choked. Big brother? Are you serious? My plan to act crazy was supposed to keep people away, not recruit a fan club. Yes. After yesterday, I reflected on my life. To be the best, I need to learn from the best, he said, nodding solemnly. I rubbed my chin. Fine. If you want to learn, you have to pay tuition. That's only fair, right? Of course. Big brother, what's your account number? He whipped out a portable card scanner from his back pocket. I rattled off my bank digits without missing a beat. Transfer 20 million into that. As a deposit. Ji Lingyu froze. 20 million? Even for my family, that's no money? Then forget it. I looked him up and down with a gaze of pure, unfiltered pity. It was the same look rich people used on beggars. Ji Lingyu's face turned bright red. Being looked down on as a poor person hurt him more than almost dying the day before. You stay right here. I'm calling my dad for the money. He stormed off to make the call. I didn't wait. I hopped onto the bus heading for the novice dungeon. I was afraid if I stayed near him any longer, his stupidity might be contagious. The bus roared to life, carrying us to the dungeon entrance. When we arrived, the place was packed with graduates from every high school in Qing City. Since the national exams were coming up, everyone was desperate to level up. Zhuge and I stood at the front of our school's line. She looked cold and distant, refusing to even glance my way. I was fine with that. Meanwhile, our principal was busy flexing on the other school heads. Oh, it's so exhausting. The principal sighed loudly, making sure everyone could hear. I told my students to stay humble, but they just wouldn't listen. 2 SSS-CLASS awakenings in 1 year. It's such a headache. The other principals looked like they wanted to strangle him. Their faces were as black as coal. Why is everyone so quiet? Our principal teased, his face glowing with pride. Are you all just naturally shy? I'm a man of action, not words. Goodbye, one principal barked, storming off. I left the stove on, gotta go. Another muttered, fleeing the scene. As they cleared out, I looked toward the shimmering portal of the novice dungeon. It was time to see what my suicidal powers could really do when I wasn't holding back. I hope you can produce 2 more SSS class students next year too. The last principal barked those words as he stormed off in a fit of rage. Our principal just grinned, his teeth flashing in a dark, satisfied smile. Next year, I'll be retired by then, he called out. The departing principal actually stumbled over his own feet in frustration. While the old men were busy bickering, the line kept moving. Soon, it was our school's turn to enter. Juga and I shot me a cold, sharp look. She hesitated, her natural kindness clearly warring with her disdain for me. It's not too late to party up with me, she said, her voice stiff. No thanks, I replied. I brushed past her without a second glance and stepped firmly into the shimmering portal of the novice dungeon. Arrogant fool, I heard her mutter behind me. If you want to die early, no one can stop you. She shook her head, clearly writing me off as a lost cause. A flash of white light blinded me. When my vision cleared, the world had shifted completely. I wasn't at the school gates anymore. I stood in the heart of a dense, ancient forest. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, splashing mottled shadows across my clothes. Random teleportation? I stretched my arms, feeling the tension leave my shoulders. Good. I was worried about having to ditch the crowd. I didn't waste time. I headed into the brush, looking for my first target. I didn't have to walk far before I spotted a round, fluffy creature. It was covered in bright pink fur and looked like a living plush doll. Most girls would have melted at the sight of it. A level 1 pink leopard cat. I wasn't fooled. It looked cute, but it was a genuine monster. It could snap a grown man's throat in seconds. The cat rolled on the ground, purring loudly, trying to lure me closer for a lethal pounce. My response was simple. I raised my right hand. Forbidden curse, world-ending mad thunder. The sky shattered. A pillar of lightning roared down from the clouds. The cat let out a sharp, terrified screech. It was just out for a morning snack, and suddenly the wrath of God was coming for its head. It didn't even have time to run. The lightning hit, and the creature was instantly reduced to a pile of charred ash. A notification popped up. 10 experience points. Only 10. I frowned. If I needed 100 kills just to hit level 2, this was going to be a slog. But then again, all my skills were forbidden curses. Why was I playing it safe? Time to go deeper, I whispered, vanishing into the thick trees. The forest's long-standing peace was officially over. It was time for a baptism of lightning. Every few minutes, a thunderclap shook the earth. I pushed forward like a human bulldozer. Whether it was a level 1 mob or a level 5 beast, my answer was always the same. I dropped a forbidden curse on their heads. I practiced until the casting became second nature. Eventually, I didn't even need a wind-up. The thunder just fell the moment I thought it. In less than an hour, I hit level 2. If the people outside knew I was leveling up once an hour, their jaws would hit the floor. With the level up, a new forbidden curse unlocked in my status window. Name, Yilin. Class, Forbidden Curse Mage. Level 2. My stats had jumped, but the new skill caught my eye. Burning Reincarnation. The description was grim. I had to burn my own life force to massively boost my strength, agility, and spirit. While active, I could cast forbidden curses with 0 mana cost and 0 cooldown. There was a small note at the bottom, asterisk warning. This skill consumes life force irreversibly. Use with extreme caution, asterisk. Extreme caution, huh? I smiled and nodded obediently. Then I took a deep breath. Forbidden curse. Burning Reincarnation. Blood-red flames erupted around my body. My life force was screaming, my very blood evaporating into a crimson mist to fuel the spell. My spirit stats skyrocketed, doubling instantly to a terrifying 120 points. I felt a rush of pure, raw power. I was so caught up in the high that I didn't notice my hair turning snow white. My skin sagged and wrinkled. My eyes grew cloudy. In just 5 minutes, I had aged from a teenager into a withered, frail old man. I lifted a hand, staring at my skin. It looked like dry tree bark. 5 minutes makes me look like this. I'm used. If I want to keep my secret, I can only run this for a minute at a time. But I didn't turn it off. I let it keep burning. Then, the miracle happened. My body began to grow backward. The wrinkles smoothed out. The white hair regained its color. My infinite immortal body kicked in, replenishing the life force as fast as the curse could burn it. The Forbidden Curse Mage was a broken class. The immortal body was a broken talent. Put them together, and I was a walking apocalypse. I kept burning reincarnation active and started a new round of slaughter. With my spirit boosted to 130 thanks to the Principal's ring, even my basic lightning looked like a soaring electric dragon. I tore through the forest. Level 5 two-headed snake. 1 shot. Level 6 armored scorpion. 1 shot. Level 6 centaur. 1 shot. The deeper I went, the stronger the monsters became. But to me, they were made of paper. I was only level 2, but I was erasing everything in my path. 1 bolt of lightning. That was all it took. Would you like the summary of the next chapter? Every monster I touched turned to charcoal. As I moved through the forest, the air filled with a faint scent of roasted meat. It was the smell of high-voltage lightning cooking demon flesh. I was getting faster, more efficient, like a god of thunder descending upon the woods. 1 wave of my hand, and another lightning strike leveled the path ahead. This newbie dungeon was supposed to be dangerous, but for me, it was a playground. By the end of the day, I hit level 3. The experience curve was getting steeper. Level 1 to 2 took 1,000 points, but 2 to 3 took 2,000. Most students were probably still struggling to reach level 2, so I was satisfied. Reaching level 3 unlocked a new forbidden curse, night fire burning the heavens. Just like my lightning, this skill required a sacrifice to summon endless flames from the depths of hell. I decided to test it out. I gathered some dry wood and held out my hand. A strange flame emerged, purple at the base and blood red at the tip, flickering like a demonic lotus. I dropped the flame onto the wood. If any other mage had seen this, they would have lost their minds. I was using an SSS-CLASS forbidden curse to start a campfire. It was like using a nuclear warhead to light a cigarette. I wasn't a masochist. Even though my immortal body meant I wouldn't starve to death, the gnawing pain of hunger still sucked. I dragged a dead 3-eyed demon boar over, skinned it, and started roasting a thick leg over the night fire. The heat was intense. The fat sizzled and dripped, creating a mouth-watering aroma. I tore off a piece of meat. It was tender, juicy, and far better than any pork I had ever tasted. Back in the slums, I was always poor and always hiding. I never got to eat like this. One day, I told myself, I'll be strong enough to never hide again. Not far away, Juga and I stopped in her tracks. She was a fire mage, and her senses were tuned to heat. She felt a massive surge of fire elements nearby. Her eyes widened. She knew no one else in the city had an SSS-CLASS fire talent. She thought she had found a hidden treasure or a legendary genius. Curious and excited, she began racing toward the source. I finished my meal and stood up. I needed to be responsible. I didn't want to start a forest fire, so I kicked some dirt over the embers and, just to be sure, I relieved myself on the pile to put it out completely. Then, I vanished back into the shadows to continue my hunt. Juga and I arrived minutes later. The clearing was empty, save for a pile of smoking ash. She knelt down and sniffed the charred wood. Her heart raced. It was definitely the aura of the legendary night fire. But then she paused. Her beautiful eyebrows knitted together. There was a strange, pungent smell mixed in with the scent of the curse. She couldn't figure out what it was, but she didn't care. Ching Ching City really does have hidden dragons, she whispered. She was determined to find this mysterious master. To her, a person who could control such fire while staying hidden was far more interesting than a reckless brute like me. She turned and began tracking the footprints leading away from the camp. I was deep in the forest, moving like a locust. I stuck to my lightning curse. Even though the fire was new, lightning was more efficient. 1 bolt, and the monster was gone. Fire took a few seconds of burning and screaming. I like to think of myself as a kind person, a saint of sorts. I didn't want the monsters to suffer. As I was about to hit level 4, I heard a noise behind me. I immediately deactivated my burning reincarnation. The red glow vanished, and my body returned to normal just as a figure stepped through the brush. It was Juga and I. Her long black hair flowed like a silver waterfall in the moonlight. I had to admit, She was stunning, but she was also a headache. I couldn't believe she had actually found me in a map this large. "Yilin, what are you doing here?" she snapped. Her face went cold. The excitement she had a moment ago vanished, replaced by pure annoyance. She assumed I had realized how hard it was to solo as a curse mage and that I was following her to beg for a spot in her party. "I told you before," she said, her voice full of disdain. "Your class isn't meant for soloing. It's too late to regret it now. Stop following me. I don't have time to carry you." I just stared at her, completely stunned by her logic. She had tracked me down, and now she was accusing me of stalking her? I realized then that she wasn't just stubborn. She was delusional. "Whatever you say," I muttered. "Go ahead. The path is all yours." I stepped aside and cleared the path, not wanting to waste another second arguing with Juga and I. I had a simple rule for living a happy life: never argue with idiots. Trying to reason with them was an even bigger mistake. I kept my head down and stayed silent, following that principle to the letter. Juga and I glanced at me, seemingly satisfied with my cooperation. She didn't say another word and brushed past me with long, confident strides. I thought I was finally rid of the headache, but she suddenly stopped in her tracks. "Wait," she said, turning back. "Did you see anyone else pass through here? Someone powerful? They're likely an expert with fire elements, possibly even a master of the night fire." There was a flicker of genuine anticipation in her eyes. I almost laughed out loud. So that was it. She had tracked me down because I used a forbidden curse just to light a campfire. The mysterious expert she was looking for was standing right in front of her. I saw him. I lied, pointing toward the dark woods in the opposite direction. "A very handsome guy. He went that way. I just wanted to get rid of her." I made a mental note to stop using night fire unless it was absolutely necessary. It was attracting too much unwanted attention. "Thank you," she muttered. Seeing that I wasn't trying to follow her anymore, her opinion of me seemed to soften slightly. She turned and vanished into the thicket I had pointed out. A moment later, something strange happened. 2 more moons appeared in the sky. 3 silver orbs now hung in the darkness, casting a ghostly, unnatural light over the trees. Jugani's face went deathly pale. Those weren't moons. They were the glowing eyes of a massive beast. With a bone-chilling roar, a colossal claw slammed down toward her position. Juga and I dove to the side, barely escaping the impact. As she scrambled to her feet, she finally saw the monster in its entirety. It was a level 8 dragon-blooded beast. We were nowhere near the heart of the forest. Why was a level 8 monster roaming the outskirts? Juga and I was only level 3. Against a beast like this, she stood no chance. She reflexively looked back toward where I had been standing. If we teamed up, we might not be able to kill it, but we could at least escape together. But I was gone. The spot where I had stood was empty. "That coward," she hissed, her teeth clenched in rage. Whatever shred of respect she had just gained from me vanished instantly. She assumed the moment the beast appeared, I had turned tail and bolted like a frightened rabbit. The dragon-blooded beast lunged again, treating her like nothing more than a snack. Its massive body felt like a falling mountain, radiating a suffocating pressure. Violent phoenix flame. Juga and I screamed, desperate. She unleashed her skills, sending a barrage of high-temperature fireballs spiraling toward the monster. They exploded against its hide, leaving scorched patches of flesh, but the damage was superficial. Instead of stopping it, the attack only drove the beast into a frenzy. Its moon-like eyes turned a deep, bloody red. It swung a massive paw, and Juga and I leaped back, narrowly avoiding being crushed. She poured everything she had into her next attack, sending a wave of phoenix fire toward the creature's face. This time, the beast didn't just take it. It opened its jagged maw and let out a roar that sounded like a dragon's cry. The sound wave was physical. It slammed into her flames, freezing them in midair before blowing them straight back at her. "What?" she gasped. She had no time to dodge. Her own fireballs slammed into her chest, shattering her defenses. The blast scorched her clothes, leaving her tattered and exposed, but she didn't care about her modesty. She stared at the beast in pure terror. One word filled her mind: death. She was going to be eaten. The gap between a level 3 and a level 8 was a canyon she couldn't cross. As the giant claw reached for her, Juga and I closed her eyes and waited for the end. No one could save her here. It was only the first day of the trial, and she was about to die a pathetic death. But the pain never came. Instead, a man's voice, low and magnetic, echoed through the clearing. Night fire heavens. A wave of terrifying heat surged past her. Juga and I snapped her eyes open and witnessed a sight she would never forget. The invincible dragon-blooded beast was completely engulfed in violet-red flames. It didn't even have time to scream. In a heartbeat, the massive creature was reduced to a pile of gray ash. It was an instant kill. A level 8 monster, deleted from existence. Standing in front of her was a man with his back turned, his entire silhouette wreathed in blood-red embers. No need. It was nothing. Student Lingyi, she called out, stepping forward to follow me. I stopped abruptly. I didn't turn around, but my voice was cold enough to bite. Don't follow me. There are stronger beasts ahead. You aren't powerful enough to step foot there. I paused, then added. Also, I suggest you put some clothes on. Juga and I looked down. Her eyes went wide. The intense heat from my flames had incinerated most of her outfit, leaving large patches of her pale skin exposed to the cool night air. She let out a sharp gasp, her face turning a deep crimson. She immediately crouched down, trying to cover herself with the remaining scraps of fabric. By the time she looked up, I had already vanished into the darkness of the woods. Lingyi, she shouted into the empty trees. Just you wait. I'll catch up to you. One day, I'll stand by your side as an equal. There was no response, only the rustle of leaves. Juga and I bit her lip, a fierce fire lighting up her eyes. She felt a crushing sense of defeat. She had always been the pride of the city, a genius among geniuses. Yet, the beast she couldn't even scratch had been deleted by Lingyi in a single second. When she tried to follow him, he treated her like a burden. Even when she was half naked, he didn't even give her a second glance. It was as if she had no charm at all. Women are strange like that. If you look, you're a creep. If you don't look, they question their own beauty. Juga and I was incredibly confident in her looks, having spent years rejecting every boy who dared to approach her. This was the first time she had ever been proactive, and she had been met with total indifference. It hurt her pride, but it also sparked a dangerous obsession. Lingyi, I'll remember you, she whispered, changing into a fresh set of clothes. We'll meet again when this trial ends. I won't lose to you. She marched off to hunt, driven by a new, desperate need to reach level 10 before the gates closed. Deep in the forest, I finally exhaled and pulled the black cloth off my face. Phew, that should keep that annoying girl off my back. The plan worked perfectly. Jugani's obsession was now focused entirely on the fictional Lingyi. As for my real identity, the coward, Yilin who ran away, she would probably never want to speak to me again. That was exactly what I wanted. I didn't save her because I liked her. I saved her because she was an SSS-class talent. If a girl like that died in a beginner zone, the city officials would turn this place upside down investigating every student. If they dug too deep, they might discover my secret immortality. I couldn't risk that. Plus, the dragon-blooded beast was worth a lot of experience. I checked my status. Killing that monster had pushed me over the edge. I was now level 4. Name, Yilin, class, Forbidden Curse Mage, level 4 0.02%, strength, 40 agility, 60 spirit, 120 skills, world-ending thunder, burning reincarnation, night fire heavens, undying eternity. I looked at the new skill, undying eternity, and my face turned green. Are you kidding me? The skill description was simple. Sacrifice 2.5 years of your lifespan to immune 1 instance of fatal damage. It felt like a total waste. I already had a body that couldn't die and didn't suffer side effects. Why would I ever need to trade my lifespan for a shield? I felt cheated. I had worked so hard for a new offensive spell, and instead, I got a garbage defensive one. But then, I stopped walking. My eyes lit up as a realization hit me. Wait, this isn't trash. This is the perfect cover. If I got stabbed through the heart or had my head cut off in front of people and just stood back up, the world would hunt me down as a monster. But with Undying Eternity, I had a logical explanation. I could just claim I was a desperate forbidden curse mage sacrificing my life to stay in the fight. It made my immortality look like a tragic cost rather than a godlike cheat. 7 days passed in a flash. It was the final day of the beginner trial. The gates were about to open, and the students would be forcibly teleported out. Outside the entrance, the atmosphere was electric. Principals, teachers, and anxious parents had gathered in a massive crowd. "Good morning, brothers. Long time no see." The principal of Qingqing High School arrived with a booming laugh. The other principals looked like they had swallowed flies. For the past week, this man had dragged them to lunch every single day just to brag about having 2 SSS-CLASS students. They were sick of hearing it, but today, the results would finally be set in stone. I stayed inside my shack for the next 7 days. I didn't want to deal with people. If I went out, the principal of Qingqing High School would just drag me into his group chats to brag. The other principals were already sick of him. They hated seeing his face. Whenever he approached, they acted like they didn't even know him. "Good morning, brothers. Long time no see," the principal shouted, grinning ear to ear. The principal of the first high school couldn't take it anymore. "We literally saw you a few days ago. What do you mean, long time no see?" "You're wrong," my principal replied, his smile widening. "The ancients said 1 day apart feels like 3 years. By that logic, we haven't seen each other in over a decade." He leaned in, rubbing his hands together mysteriously. "By the way, did you hear? Our school produced 2 SSS-CLASS students this year." The others looked sour. One principal scoffed. "So what if you have 2 SSS-CLASS students? Leveling up is what matters. A high-level A class can easily crush a low-level SSS class. If talent was everything, the rest of us should just quit now." "He's right," another added. "There have been plenty of SSS-CLASS geniuses who got suppressed by lower-ranked students once they left the novice trial. The record for Qingqing is level 11, set by an S-class student. It hasn't been broken in years." They all looked at Principal Su, a man with a dignified expression. "That student was from your school, wasn't he?" Principal Su nodded calmly. "Talent is a start, but hard work finishes the job. That boy is level 65 now." The other principals went silent, their eyes filled with envy. A level 65 powerhouse was a force of nature. In a small place like Qingcheng, you could count the people who could beat him on one hand. "I wonder if the record will be broken today," one whispered. "I believe in my students," my principal said, his eyes burning with competitive fire. "Old Gao," Principal Su said, addressing my principal. "Does Qingqing High even have any S-class students this year?" "Just wait and see," Old Gao grumbled, refusing to back down. Suddenly, a man appeared beside them. He moved like a ghost, silent and unnoticed. "You gentlemen seem to be having a lot of fun. Mind if I join?" The principals jumped. They were shocked that someone could sneak up on them so easily. The newcomer wore a trench coat and gold-rimmed glasses. He looked refined, scholarly, and completely harmless. "Mr. Zhuge, please sit." The principals scrambled to make room, their voices dripping with respect. In a small city like Qingcheng, there weren't many big shots. Zhuge Qianxing was the exception. He was an SSS-class astrologer. People said he could see the future of the world just by looking at the stars. Powerful men traveled from across the country just to get a reading from him. He was, without question, the most important person in the city. "You're too kind," Zhuge Qianxing said with a gentle smile. "I'm just here to check on my daughter, and I. "Ah, Zhuge and I. She's the pride of Qingcheng High," Old Gao said, beaming. He was still thrilled she had chosen his school over the more prestigious ones. Some said her father had foreseen something special there, but Old Gao didn't care about the rumors. He just cared about the results. Suddenly, the portal flashed. "Someone's coming out," a teacher shouted. The principals looked confused. It was way too early. Even the fastest students weren't expected until noon. Usually, early exits meant someone got injured or chickened out. A tall, graceful figure stepped through the white light. It was Zhuge and I. She looked perfectly fine, her face glowing with health. "Dad," she cried, running into Zhuge Qianxing's arms. He patted her head affectionately. "The trial isn't over yet. Why are you out so early?" "It was boring," she said, pouting playfully. The principal stood there, frozen. Boring? The novice trial was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to level up quickly against weak monsters. And she left because she was bored? "What level are you?" her father asked, adjusting his glasses. Zhuge and I smirked and toggled her status visibility. Level 12. Fire Mage. The crowd gasped. The city record was level 11, and she had smashed it while leaving early. It was unheard of. The other principals glared at Old Gao, wishing they had her at their schools. Good. Very good, Old Gao shouted, his face turning red with excitement. But Zhuge Qianxing remained expressionless. And if you had stayed until the end, you could have hit level 13. Why did you really come out? I told you, it was boring, she muttered, looking away. Her father smiled thinly. Is that the truth? Oh, Dad, stop it, she said, hugging his arm. She wasn't about to tell him she came out early to hunt down that mysterious guy, Lin Yi, the one who one-shot the dragon-blooded beast. He had been wearing a mask, but she was sure she could recognize him if she saw him again. Meanwhile, deep inside the trial zone, I let out a sudden sneeze. I rubbed my nose, looking around the forest. It wasn't cold. That was weird. I hadn't seen a single beast in nearly 2.5 hours. It was completely bizarre. I had already reached the deepest part of the trial zone, the territory of the level 10 monsters. Did I kill too many of them over the last few days? Were they actually running away from me? Well, they couldn't hide forever. My eyes flashed. Forbidden Curse, Burning Samsara. Forbidden Curse, Dance of Flash. I activated 2 curses back-to-back. Burning Samsara massively boosted my strength, agility, and spirit stats. Meanwhile, Dance of Flash had only one purpose, and that was pure speed. This curse sacrificed my own organs to grant an agility multiplier based on how vital the organ was. At maximum output, it could grant 10 times my base agility for a full hour. Clearly, it was meant as a last resort escape skill for life or death situations. But with my immortal body, it was just a regular speed buff. I didn't hesitate. I sacrificed my own brain to trigger the full 10-fold agility multiplier. After all, when it came to vital organs, nothing beats the brain. At level 15, my base agility was already 225 points. With both Burning Samsara and Dance of Flash active, my agility instantly shot up to a terrifying 2,475 points. Even high-level assassin classes couldn't dream of reaching a stat like that. A smile crept onto my face. I took a light step forward. It felt like space itself warped around me. In the blink of an eye, I reappeared a kilometer away. Having access to more forbidden curses completely transformed my combat capabilities and versatility. After flashing forward, I finally noticed what was wrong. The sight before me left me stunned. 3 Tempest Mantises were flying in the air, and each one was carrying a 3-eyed demon spider. I instantly understood what was happening. Tempest Mantises were incredibly fast flyers, but their eyesight was terrible. 3-eyed demon spiders were slow, but their third eye could see extremely far, tracking prey from over a kilometer away. By carrying the spiders, the mantises had created a primitive surveillance system. No wonder I hadn't seen a single monster in over 2 hours. These creatures were spying on me and warning the others to flee. My expression turned strange. Nature really was fascinating. Low-level monsters usually lacked intelligence and never cooperated. But under the absolute terror of my presence, they had actually learned to work together. It was almost touching. Since they were so clever, I decided to reward them. I would let them hear the symphony of thunder. Forbidden Curse, World-Ending Thunder. Boom. A massive bolt of lightning, hundreds of feet wide, crashed down from the heavens. It blasted the mantises and spiders straight to the afterlife. Without their surveillance system, my hunting trip went back to normal. The slaughter resumed. Outside the trial zone, students kept teleporting out. They had spent 7 days and nights inside. Exhaustion was written all over their faces. Many had torn clothes and looked like beggars, but their eyes shone with excitement. Real combat wasn't something you could understand from lectures. You had to experience it to know how incredible it felt to be an awakened class user. No one around me knew just how monstrous my true power was. Meanwhile, Zhuge and I was left with no choice but to use the dumbest method possible to find her savior. She had to search with her own eyes. She firmly believed that the moment Ling Yi appeared, she would recognize him instantly. But as the students poured out one after another, she couldn't find that familiar figure. Her heart grew anxious. She kept her eyes glued to the exit, her face filled with anticipation. She kept wondering where Ling Yi was. Time ticked away. Most of the students had already exited the trial zone. Some had already registered their levels and left with their parents. Yet, Zhuge and I still hadn't seen the person she was looking for. Her anxiety deepened. Almost everyone was out, so why hadn't Ling Yi shown up? When she first met him, his level was clearly higher than hers. That meant he must have entered the trial zone much earlier. She was confident that if they had entered at the same time, her level wouldn't lose to anyone. Students from Qingqin High School were walking out in waves, but there was still no sign of him. Just as she was drowning in confusion, a familiar figure stepped out of the glowing white portal. Zhuge Ni's eyes widened. She was absolutely certain. This was the man she had been thinking about day and night. It was Ling Yi. She could never forget him. When she had faced the dragon-blooded beast in utter despair, this exact figure had stood in front of her. I had no desire to argue with a woman like that, so I turned to leave. Principal Gao saw the tension and rushed over to play peacemaker. He was beaming, desperate to know my progress. As one of the 2 SSS-CLASS awakeners in Qingqin High School, I was his greatest hope. I didn't say a word. I simply let my status display for everyone to see. Yi Lin, Forbidden Curse Mage, level 16. After I had dealt with the surveillance issue, I had used my remaining time to grind out one last level. Level 16, not bad, not bad, Principal Gao muttered. Then he froze. It was like he had been struck by lightning. Level 16. His shocked scream echoed across the plaza, drawing every eye in the vicinity. People looked at me like I was a monster. Before Zhuge and I came along, the highest record in Qingqin's history was level 11. Reaching level 16 in just 7 days was unheard of. That kind of speed was demonic, even on a global scale. It was a record that likely wouldn't be broken for decades. Principal Gao started counting on his fingers, his face turning pale as he did the math. To get from level 1 to 16, you needed a total of 120,000 experience points. The highest level monsters in the novice zone were level 10, worth 100 points each. That means you killed 1,200 level 10 monsters, the principal whispered, cold sweat dripping down his forehead. That's an average of 172 kills a day. Even if you didn't eat or sleep, you had to kill more than 7 high-level monsters every single hour. The crowd went silent. Their scalps felt numb just thinking about it. Level 10 monsters were the strongest beings in that zone. Most students needed a full team in 30 minutes just to take one down. Was I even human? Even Zhuge Qinxing, the powerful expert, gave me an interested look. I just rubbed my nose and stayed quiet. Honestly, the only reason I wasn't a higher level was that the monsters were too sparse. I spent most of my time walking around looking for them. As for the combat, it only took a second to drop a forbidden curse. That wasn't the time-consuming part. Well done, Yilin. You are the pride of Qingqin High. Principal Gao slapped my shoulder, his eyes shining with pride. With me and Zhuge and I, he didn't have to worry about the college entrance trials anymore. We would crush the competition. 2 SSS-CLASS students, level 12 and level 16. No other school could stand against that. He grinned so wide his face looked like a blooming chrysanthemum. But then, a cold voice cut through the celebration. What's so strange about level 16? Zhuge and I sneered. Don't forget, he's a forbidden curse mage. If he doesn't care about his life and just keeps spamming curses, of course he'll level up fast. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The shock in the onlookers' eyes turned into mockery and judgment. They realized she was right. Forbidden curse mages trade their life force for power. They thought I was a lunatic who had traded my longevity for a temporary rank. Most mages of my class don't live past 25. The way I was going, I'd be lucky to see 20. So he traded his life for a bit of fame. How stupid, someone whispered. Let him have his moment, another sneered. He literally paid for those levels with his years. Let him act tough for a few days. Just like that, my achievement became a joke. It was like finding out your friend got rich, but only because they sold their internal organs. The envy vanished, replaced by pity and ridicule. Yilin, why push yourself so hard? Principal Su from Yutsai High sighed, sounding heartbroken. If I had to guess, Principal Gao forced you to power level to win glory for the school, didn't he? He's using your life for his reputation. Principal Gao's face turned bright red. Su, don't talk nonsense. I would never gamble with a student's life. Is that so? Why don't we ask Yilin? Principal Su turned to me with a sharp gaze. Tell the truth, son. Don't be afraid of retaliation. Did he force you? Principal Gao started sweating. He had indeed given me and Zhuge and I special equipment to help us level up. If I threw him under the bus now, his career was over. He looked at me, and for a split second, I saw a flash of murderous intent in his eyes. I looked up, and the entire crowd waited for my answer. Principal Gao didn't force me, I said calmly. Everything I did in the novice zone was my own choice. Principal Gao let out a breath he had been holding for a lifetime. He looked relieved, but Principal Su wasn't satisfied. Do you really expect us to believe that? Su asked. I looked him straight in the eye. Principal Su, let me ask you something. If you had awakened as a forbidden curse mage, what would you have done? What would you choose? I asked, looking him dead in the eye. Would you choose to be a coward, shrinking back in fear for your entire life? Or would you choose to let go of your inhibitions and do something great? Even if you wither away in your most brilliant moment, isn't that better? I clenched my fists tight. My voice rang out across the square, steady and firm. I, Yilin, would rather be a hero for a single minute than a coward for a lifetime. The crowd fell into a stunned silence. I saw the mockery in their eyes fade, replaced by a flicker of genuine respect. They hadn't expected a suicidal mage to have such ambition. Of course, some still sneered. To them, a dead man was just a dead man, no matter how spectacular the fireworks were. Principal Su opened his mouth to argue, but the words died in his throat. Suddenly, the sound of slow, rhythmic clapping broke the silence. Zhuge Qinxing stepped forward, looking at me with newfound interest. Yilin, you truly have grand ambitions, he said smoothly. Regardless of anything else, your level is 16. You are the highest-ranked student to come out of this novice zone. That is an undeniable fact. You are the number one. With a titan like Zhuge Qinxing backing me up, the critics shut their mouths. You might look down on a slum kid like me, but nobody dared to disrespect the head of the Zhuge family. But his daughter, Zhuge and I, wasn't having it. She stomped her foot, glaring at her father. Dad, who told you he was first? Just wait until Lin Yi comes out. His level will definitely be higher than this guy's. Oh, and who is this Lin Yi? Zhuge Qinxing asked, turning to the various school principals. They all looked at each other and shook their heads. None of them had ever heard the name. Don't worry about it. Zhuge and I snapped, her face full of conviction. You'll know when he walks out. He's the real genius here. Zhuge Qinxing smiled warmly. If you think so highly of him, I'm interested in meeting him too. He turned back to me and handed me a professional business card. Yilin, allow me to introduce myself. I am Zhuge Qinxing, and I Ni's father. If you ever run into trouble or need anything, contact me. The moment our eyes met, my chest tightened. Behind those glasses, his eyes were deep and sharp. It felt like he was peering straight through my skin, unraveling every secret I held. Thank you, Mr. Zhuge, I muttered, quickly taking the card. I couldn't look at him anymore. I felt exposed. I'll be going now. Of course, he replied with that same calm smile. Go home and rest. I have a feeling we'll be seeing each other again very soon. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked away as fast as I could without running. Something about that man told me he knew more than he was letting on. Yilin, don't forget to report back to school in 3 days for the college entrance exam. Principal Gao shouted after me. The novice zone was just the warm-up. The exam was the real deal. After I left, the crowd stayed behind. They were curious. If Zhuge and I was right, there was a genius even more terrifying than a level 16 forbidden mage. If I was a monster, what was this Lin Yi? They waited as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, orange shadows across the ground. Finally, the gates of the novice zone began to glow and slowly creak shut. This was it. Everyone who was coming out had already been teleported. The crowd turned to Zhuge and I. Well, where's this genius? Zhuge Ni's face went pale. That's impossible. I watched the exit the whole time. Where is he? Then, her expression shifted to one of realization and fury. There was a short window when I had first walked out where she was too busy arguing with me to watch the gate. She assumed Lin Yi must have slipped past her then. That damn Yilin. He ruined it again. The crowd felt cheated. They grumbled and dispersed, leaving her standing there in a rage. On the way home, Zhuge Qianxing patted his daughter's head. So, and I, where is this genius of yours? Dad, even you don't believe me, she cried out, frustrated. She went on to explain everything, how Lin Yi had saved her life and his incredible power. Zhuge Qianxing listened with an amused expression. So you left the zone early just to catch him at the exit? She nodded sheepishly. Her father pushed up his glasses, a strange glint flashing in his eyes. And I, have you considered the possibility that Yi Lin is the Lin Yi you're looking for? Zhuge and I burst out laughing. Dad, don't insult Lin Yi like that. Yi Lin isn't fit to carry his shoes. That coward ran away the second he saw the dragon-whiskered beast. Besides, Lin Yi has total mastery over fire and can even control Nightfire. Yi Lin can't do any of that. If they're the same person, I'll become his slave and serve him for the rest of my life. She scoffed at the very idea. One was her hero, the other was a brute she loathed. It was impossible. Is that so? Perhaps, Zhuge Qianxing murmured, not pushing the subject further. By the time I reached my shack in the slums, the moon was high, spilling silver light over the dirty streets. I let out a long, shaky breath as I locked the door. It was a dump, but it was my dump. It was the only place I felt safe. I sat down, my heart finally slowing. Level 16. SSS-CLASS, Forbidden Mage. 16 forbidden curses ready to fire. I wasn't a helpless commoner anymore. Even if someone discovered my immortality, I had enough firepower to blast my way out of the city and hide in the mountains. For the first time since arriving in this world, I felt a sense of security. Then, a sharp knock echoed through the room. Knock, knock, knock. My heart skipped a beat. This was the slums. Even the most desperate thieves wouldn't bother coming here because the people living in these shacks were usually poorer than the crooks themselves. Who would be knocking on my door in the middle of the night? I tensed up, preparing a spell in my mind just in case. I stood up and pulled the door open. Standing there was a middle-aged man in a crisp suit, clutching a briefcase. He looked completely out of place against the backdrop of grime and rotting wood. His expensive outfit screamed money. Can I help you? I asked, my eyes narrowing. You must be Yi Lin, the man said, wiping sweat from his forehead. He reached out a hand to introduce himself. I finally found you. I'm Manager Wang, from the Qingqing Brainpower Oral Liquid Company. I looked at his sweaty, dripping palm and felt zero desire to shake it. Sorry about the sweat, Manager Wang said with an awkward laugh, rubbing his hand on his trousers. Your street is too narrow for my car. I had to walk quite a distance. Get to the point, I said. I didn't have time for small talk. Right. You awakened an SSS-class profession and broke the record for the Qingqing Novice Dungeon, didn't you? I'm here to ask if you're interested in filming a commercial for us. He held up 3 fingers. We can offer you 300,000 credits for the ad. I felt a jolt of surprise. The irony wasn't lost on me. Just a short while ago, I had practically sold every non-essential organ in my body just to scrape together 100,000. Now, simply because I had an SSS-class rank, someone was offering me 3 times that amount for a single video. In my old life, I would have had to sell 10 kidneys to see that kind of money. Seeing that I hadn't rejected him immediately, Manager Wang pushed harder. 300,000 is just the starting price. If you become our official spokesperson and perform well in the National College entrance exams, we can offer much more. The company has already authorized me to go as high as 3 million. I squinted at him. I was definitely short on cash. Being a professional was an expensive path. I didn't need to worry about skill books because of my infinite curses, but equipment was a different story. Right now, the only thing I owned was a basic ring from Principal Gao Jintian that gave me a measly 10 points of spirit. It didn't even have a level requirement. Standing here isn't ideal, Manager Wang suggested, sensing my interest. Why don't we find a place to eat and discuss the details? I nodded and followed him out. A sleek black luxury car was parked at the entrance of the slum alley. I didn't know much about cars, but I could tell this one cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Manager Wang opened the door for me, and we sat in the back. 10 minutes later, we pulled up to a secluded farmhouse restaurant. Come, Yi Lin, let's get out, Manager Wang said enthusiastically. Don't let the look of this place fool you. The food here is top tier. The chickens are free range, the vegetables are organic, and the fish is fresh from the stream. Once you taste it, you'll see. The chicken tastes like chicken, the fish tastes like fish, and the vegetables taste like fertilizer. I finished for him. Manager Wang's face froze for a second. You're quite the joker, Yilin. Let's go inside. The farmhouse felt oddly new, like it had just opened. I could still smell a faint scent of fresh paint and renovation. We sat in a private booth, and the servers brought out the dishes almost immediately. I didn't hold back and started eating. Manager Wang wasn't lying about the food. The chicken was tender, melting in my mouth with a rich, savory flavor. I ate happily. A meal like this was way out of my budget before today. Slow down, Yilin. No rush. If it's not enough, we'll order more, Manager Wang said, smiling as he placed more food on my plate. Thanks. You're a good man, I said, my mouth full of drumstick. Manager Wang's expression turned strange, almost predatory. Of course I am. Does it taste good? It's great, I mumbled, swallowing a large bite. Do you feel dizzy at all? He asked, his smile widening. Actually, a little. As soon as the words left my mouth, my head slumped. Thud. I collapsed onto the table, unconscious. Manager Wang's smile turned into a cold sneer. So easy to trick. What a moron. I had so many backup plans ready for nothing. He wiped his hands and stood up, looking down at my limp body. He kicked me once, but I didn't move. Then, he raised his foot and ground the hard heel of his leather shoe into my palm. He pressed down until my flesh was a bloody mess, but I didn't make a sound. Satisfied that I was truly out, he pulled out his phone. Hey, boss. It's done. The kid is out like a dead pig. A few minutes later, the door to the booth pushed open. A sharp-looking middle-aged man walked in. If I had been awake, I would have recognized him instantly. He was the black market boss who had bought my kidneys. Good work, the boss said, nodding to Manager Wang. But boss, Manager Wang hesitated. I don't get it. Why go to all this trouble for a student? If anyone finds out, we're in deep trouble. He's an SSS-CLASS talent. The city officials will be all over this. The less you know, the longer you live, the boss snapped, his eyes cold. Get out. Nobody enters this room without my order. Kill anyone who tries. Yes, boss, Manager Wang muttered, scurrying out and closing the door behind him. Once he was alone, the boss knelt beside me. He stared at me with the intensity of a scientist discovering an alien life form. His rough hands began to roam over my body, feeling my torso with a terrifying focus. Kidneys, spleen, liver, gallbladder, corneas, coronary artery, small intestine. His expression grew twisted, his eyes gleaming with an uncontrollable excitement. They're back. I can feel it. They're all back. The organs this kid sold me, they've all grown back perfectly. Incredible. This is absolutely impossible. He stroked my skin as if he were touching a priceless treasure. If I can master the secret of organ regeneration. If you master that secret, a voice whispered right in the boss's ear. Even the most powerful elites would have to treat you like royalty. Yes, exactly, the boss hissed, nodding frantically. When that happens, I don't care who they are. They'll all have to crawl at my feet and beg. The boss was so excited he looked like he wanted to jump for joy. But then he froze. He realized something was wrong. There were only two people in this room, him and my unconscious body. Where did that third voice come from? He spun around, eyes wide. He came face to face with me. I was standing there, expressionless, watching him. You're awake, he gasped. That's impossible. I put 3 times the normal dose of sedatives in that food. Even an elephant would be out cold for 6 hours. I looked at him coldly. That's not the question you should be asking. I'm more curious about how you tracked me. I remembered leaving the black market. I had taken several detours and doubled back to make sure no one was following me before I headed home. How did this crooked businessman find my shack? I'll explain that once I've taken you down, the boss sneered. I only used the drugs because I didn't want the hassle. You actually think you're a match for me. He pulled out a long, razor-sharp blade. A status screen flickered in my mind. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a level 20 awakened. His class was Phantom Blade. They were known for speed and, more importantly, the ability to completely mask their presence. They moved like ghosts. It made sense now. A level 20 professional tracking a normal student? I never stood a chance of noticing him. Just give up, he said, licking the flat of his blade. If I have to fight, I can't guarantee you'll keep all your limbs. I looked at him with a strange expression. It felt like a first grader was posing in a karate stance, telling me his fists were deadly weapons. It was almost cute. I activated my power. Forbidden curse, samsara of burning blood. Red flames erupted around my body. I thought about using the world-ending lightning to finish this instantly, but we were indoors. I didn't want to bring the whole building down and attract the authorities. I needed something quieter. I chose a different curse, Pupil of the Surging Tide. This curse required a sacrifice. It would consume my eyeballs. In exchange, it would flash freeze everything within my line of sight until I went blind. I hadn't used this one yet since most monsters in the novice dungeon died before I could even blink. The moment I activated it, my dark pupils turned a translucent, crystalline white. It was beautiful and terrifying. I looked down, focusing on his body while avoiding his head. Before the boss could even react, ice crystals began to bloom across his skin. "What is this?" he screamed. He swung his sword at the ice, trying to shatter it. Sparks flew. A loud clang echoed as his blade hit the ice and dropped to the floor. The ice didn't have a scratch, but the impact split the skin on his hand, leaving it bleeding. The crystals were as hard as diamonds. Within seconds, everything below his neck was a solid block of ice. He was a living statue. At that exact moment, my world went pitch black. My vision was gone. The Pupil of the Surging Tide was effective, but it definitely cost an arm and a leg. Or in this case, 2 eyes. Not that it mattered to me. I focused my mind, and a second later, my optic nerves reconnected and new eyeballs grew perfectly into their sockets. "Impossible," the boss stammered. "You're only level 16. I'm level 20. Even a forbidden mage shouldn't be able to take me down in one hit. What kind of monster are you?" He struggled, but a curse bought with my own eyes wasn't something a level 20 could just wiggle out of. "Now," I said, blinking my fresh eyes to get used to the light. "Let's have a chat. How many people know my organs can regenerate?" The boss clamped his mouth shut. His face was turning a sickly shade of purple from the cold radiating off the ice. "You don't have to talk," I said, walking over to the table. "But if this keeps up, the tissue below your neck will die. You'll go from a high and mighty level 20 to a paralyzed vegetable." I poured myself a cup of hot tea from the pot on the table. "Don't drink that. There's sedatives in that too," he yelled. He wasn't worried about me. He was terrified that if I passed out, he'd freeze to death before I could thaw him. I didn't listen. I tilted the cup back and swallowed the entire thing. I wiped my mouth and looked at his shocked face. "Why?" he whispered. "Why doesn't the medicine work on you?" "You want to know?" I asked with a smile. "Then tell me first. How many people know my secret?" His lips were blue now. "Just me. I saw you sell 2 kidneys and your corneas that day. I figured you wouldn't live long, so I planned to bring you back here to harvest whatever was left and get my money back. But then I saw you walking through the market like nothing happened, even though you should have been blind. I got curious. I investigated, found out you were an orphan, and had my men set a trap. I stepped closer. Are you sure it's just you? I feel like you're lying." "I wanted the secret for myself," he hissed. "I didn't tell anyone. My men know they were kidnapping you, but they don't know why." "Good to know," I said. "Now, do you want me to tell you my secret, or should I tell the person watching through that camera?" I picked up his fallen sword and swung. I sliced his left arm clean off. The frozen limb hit the floor and shattered into icy shards. Tucked inside his sleeve, a tiny black microcamera fell out. I picked it up while the boss turned pale with agony. I activated a curse, and violet flames reduced the camera to ash. "Who is behind you?" I asked, putting the blade to his throat. "Just kill me," he groaned, closing his eyes. "If I don't tell you, only I die. If I do, my whole family is dead." "As you wish," I said. I didn't hesitate. I swung the blade, and his head rolled across the floor like a fallen melon. His eyes were still wide, shocked that I had ended it so abruptly. Once he was dead, I turned the blade on myself. I pointed it at my own stomach and performed a quick, precise incision. I reached in and pulled out my stomach. Wrapped inside were several layers of thick plastic bags. Every bit of drugged food and tea I had consumed was trapped inside the plastic, never touching my digestive system. I might be immortal, but I knew toxins could still affect me. I wasn't taking any chances. I tossed the bags aside and watched as my stomach knit itself back together in seconds. I had work to do. I wasn't worried about the poison. I had prepared for this by wrapping the drugged food in 5 layers of thick plastic bags before swallowing them. Plastic is a high molecular compound. It doesn't degrade naturally, and stomach acid can't touch it. Plus, it's cheap. Once I pulled the bags out of my gut, I haphazardly stuffed my organs back in and let my body knit itself shut. I wasn't taking any chances with this farmhouse. To make sure no one left alive, I decided to activate a forbidden curse. Forbidden curse, necrotic domain. The cost was steep. My brain cells began dying at a rate of 100 million per second to fuel the spell. A massive barrier manifested, sealing the entire area behind a wall of death. Until I died, this barrier could not be broken. If anyone tried to attack it from the outside, it would only accelerate my brain death. It was the ultimate cage. The ground cracked open. Bleached white skeletons crawled out from the dirt, their empty sockets burning with ghostly green soul fire. Then came the headless knights, ancient skeletal dragons, and formless wraiths. They swarmed the perimeter, surrounding the farm in a sea of rot. Unless someone killed me, there was no way out. The people inside the farm lost their minds. They had never seen anything this terrifying. It looked like the end of the world. The undead didn't attack immediately. They just stood there, silent sentinels guarding the exits. I walked out of the private room, a blade in one hand and the boss's severed head in the other. Manager Wong was waiting right outside the door. When he saw me, his face turned the color of ash. He had heard strange noises but stayed put because the boss had ordered him not to enter. He never expected his boss to come out in pieces. "Get him! Take him down!" Wong screamed. The bodyguards lunged at me. They were all awakened, and their levels weren't low. I didn't care. Forbidden curse, Nightfire Heavens. I unleashed the spell, and a wave of violet heat incinerated almost everyone in the hallway instantly. How are you awake?" Wong stammered, falling onto his backside. He had personally checked to make sure I was unconscious. "I woke up just for you," I said, smiling as I stepped closer. "Tell me, who is the person behind all this?" Wong's pupils shrunk. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard, but he kept his mouth shut. "Not talking?" I asked. I let out a cruel laugh. I turned and drove my blade into the chest of a bodyguard who was still gasping for air on the floor. The man stared at me in shock. He looked like he wanted to ask why I was stabbing him instead of the manager. "You're a demon," Wong whispered, his eyes wide with horror. To him, I was a monster who killed with total indifference. He didn't realize that I had done far worse things to myself while testing my immortality. Killing others was easy compared to that. "Can we talk now?" I pulled the blade out and walked toward another wounded guard. "You can't handle the person behind us," Wong said, gritting his teeth. "Just leave." I didn't argue. I just swung the blade again. Another body hit the floor. This time, I didn't go for a third guard. I walked straight up to Wong and hovered the bloody tip of the sword over his throat. "It doesn't matter if I can handle him," I said quietly. "What matters is that if you don't speak, you die right now. Think carefully." Wong's terror reached its breaking point. I'll talk. The boss works for the underground king of Qing City. His name is Ken Sr. Ken Sun. The name sounded familiar. One of the top 10 outstanding philanthropists. I frowned. "The one who was just on TV?" "Yes, that's him," Wong whispered. "All right, get lost," I said, rolling my eyes. "Why are you so scared? I told you, I don't kill cowards with my blade. I don't lie. Yes. I'm sorry for doubting you. I'm going." Wong ran. He made it about 10 paces before a wave of searing heat hit him from behind. Violet flames erupted, swallowing him whole. He screamed for a few seconds before he was reduced to a pile of gray ash. I watched the embers flicker. My blade really doesn't kill cowards. But luckily for me, I also know a few curses. I raised my hand again. My face turned deathly pale as I drained my energy for the final blow to this place. Forbidden curse, burning reincarnation. A beautiful, terrifying lotus of fire began to bloom in the center of the farm. The moment the fire lotus bloomed, the entire farm was swallowed by a wall of violet flames. Maybe there were innocent people inside that place, but I didn't have the luxury of checking. My life was on the line. I told myself that at those extreme temperatures, they'd be vaporized instantly. It was a painless way to go. I cleaned up every trace of my presence and deactivated my necrotic realm. I vanished into the night, leaving nothing behind but a patch of scorched, blackened earth. When I finally got back to my shack, I splashed cold water on my face. I took deep breaths, trying to stop my heart from racing. I had killed people tonight. It wasn't like slaying monsters or mindless beasts. These were living, breathing humans. But the guilt was quickly replaced by a cold chill. Kinsen's revenge was coming. I just needed to survive 3 more days until the national exam. Once the trial started, I'd be under official protection. Even a king of the underworld like Kinsun wouldn't be able to touch me then. The problem was where to hide for the next 72 hours. Staying in this slum was suicide. Suddenly, a heavy knock thudded against my door. My heart skipped a beat. Had they found me already? I didn't open the door. Instead, I slipped out the back window and circled around to the front, my fingers already tracing the runes for a forbidden curse. If it was Kinsen's men, I was going to blow them all to hell and run for it. I crept closer, the moonlight revealing a familiar face. It was Ji Lingyu. I relaxed my grip on the curse. What was this kid doing here? Then it hit me. He was my ticket out of here. I climbed back through the window, walked to the front door, and swung it open. Boss, you're finally back. Ji Lingyu looked excited, completely unaware he had just been seconds away from being erased from existence. Look, I talked to my dad. I couldn't get the 20 million yet, but... Forget the money, I interrupted, grabbing his shoulder. I've decided to accept you as my lackey. From now on, I'm going to personally protect you. I'm moving in. Ji Lingyu blinked, stunned. Wait, really? Absolutely, I said, steering him toward his car. You called me boss, didn't you? A leader has to look out for his people. The G Group was one of the most powerful corporations in Qing City. No matter how tough Kinsen thought he was, he wouldn't dare storm the Ji family estate to kidnap someone. Ji Lingyu looked like he'd won the lottery. He thought he was being clever, using his wealth to bait a powerful bodyguard for free. I let him think that. We walked to the car like best friends, both of us convinced we were the ones doing the scamming. As the car pulled away, a shadow detached itself from a nearby corner and vanished into the darkness. Deep within the Qing City underground market, a man sat in a plush leather chair, puffing on a thick cigar. He had a soft, friendly face and a bit of a belly, looking more like a kind uncle than a crime lord. This was Kinsun. A beautiful woman stood nearby, wiping her hands. We lost contact with Su Jihu 30 minutes ago, she reported. By the time our scouts arrived, the farm was a ruin. It looks like the work of a high-level awakened. And the student, Yilin? Ji Lingyu just picked him up 5 minutes ago. Kinsen's eyes narrowed, the smoke curling around his head. The Ji family is involved now. Earlier that day, Su Jihu had told him he'd found something strange about a high school kid. He said the boy's body held a massive secret, something that could change everything. He hadn't given details, promising to report back once the kid was captured. Now Su Jihu was dead. What are you hiding, Yilin? Kinsun whispered, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. He leaned back, a predatory light flickering in his eyes. It seems I've been quiet for too long. If the Ji family thinks they can block my path, I'll have to remind them who really owns this city. Meanwhile, we arrived at the wealthy district. The car pulled up to a massive villa that made my shack look like a trash can. I actually had to stop at a public restroom near the gates, and I was genuinely annoyed to find that even the toilets here smelled like expensive perfume. Being rich must be nice. Inside the mansion, a row of beautiful maids in crisp uniforms bowed low as I walked in. Good evening, Master Yi, they chirped in unison. I stared, my eyes nearly popping out of my head. Back in my old life, I was broke. In this life, I was a slum dweller who nearly starved to death. And here was Ji Lingyu, living like a king. I felt a sudden surge of resentment. If I had been born into this, I wouldn't have to work half as hard. Like what you see, boss. Ji Lingyu smirked, leaning in close. Just say the word, and you can pick any of them. I pointed at 3 of the maids. That one, and that one. Ji Lingyu's grin widened. 3? Not bad. No, I said deadpan. Those 3 stay. The rest? Send them to my room. Ji Lingyu froze, his jaw dropping. I let out a short laugh and shook my head. I'm joking. Just show me where I'm sleeping. He led me to a guest suite with a bed larger than my entire kitchen. I collapsed onto the soft mattress, feeling the tension bleed out of my muscles. I was safe here. Kinson wouldn't be stupid enough to raid this place. I closed my eyes and drifted into a deep sleep, unaware that outside in the dark, the entire Qing City underworld was starting to move. Everyone knew Kinson was planning something big, but I had other problems to deal with first. The next morning, I opened my eyes to find a maid standing right by my bed. She gently tucked a stray hair behind her ear and looked at me with a soft, practiced smile. "Young Master Yi, you're awake," she whispered. "Time to wash up." A steaming hot towel was thrust into my face before I could even sit up. I was so startled I actually slapped myself. I thought I was still dreaming. I'd lived in the slums for years, where waking up usually meant checking if my roof had leaked overnight. I wasn't used to beautiful girls waiting on my every move. "Young Master Yi, is something wrong? Did you have a nightmare?" She grabbed my hand to stop me from hitting myself again. I was still in a daze as she wiped my face. Before I knew it, 2 more maids appeared, ready to brush my teeth for me. That was where I drew the line. I snatched the toothbrush away, insisting I could handle my own mouth. The feeling of being pampered like a helpless infant made my skin crawl. By the time I finished, Ji Lingyu was already waiting at the door. "Morning, boss," he smirked. "How was the sleep? Getting used to the lifestyle?" "It's fine," I muttered, nodding. "Great. Let's go eat." He led me to the dining room. It was just the 2 of us, yet the table was buried under 20 different dishes. 8 stunning girls stood in a row, bowing the second we walked in. "Good morning, Master Ji." "Good morning, Master Yi." Ji Lingyu sat down with practiced ease. One girl immediately handed him a bowl of soup at the perfect temperature. He took a sip, and another girl placed a perfectly peeled, deveined jumbo shrimp on his plate. He took one bite of the best part, and the rest was discarded. Then came the cherries, 2 red, 2 green, fed to him one by one. I just stood there, staring. I'd seen rich people in my old life, but this was a whole new level of ridiculous. In this world, if you weren't an awakened, you were basically a servant. Your life had 0 value. "Boss, sit down. Are you not hungry?" Ji Lingyu asked, his mouth full of crab meat being spoon-fed to him. "No, the food looks great," I said, finally pulling up a chair. "I've just never seen anyone eat like this. It's interesting." Ji Lingyu laughed. "You'll get used to it. I pay them to serve, they serve. It's the natural order of things." After breakfast, Ji Lingyu clapped his hands. 2 rows of maids walked in carrying silver trays. They held designer shirts, tailored pants, and silk ties. "What's all this?" I asked. "Boss, let them get you dressed. We're going to an auction gala tonight. Every big name in Qing City will be there." Ji Lingyu had a plan. He wanted to officially show me off as his boss in front of the city's elite. He figured if everyone knew we were tied together, he'd be untouchable. He was basically trying to turn me into his personal bodyguard and status symbol. "I'm not going," I said, shaking my head. I just wanted to hide at his place until the college entrance exam started. I turned around and headed to the bathroom. I really had to pee. But when I pushed the door open, I froze. 4 maids were standing inside. One had dry tissues, one had wet wipes, and the other 2 just stood there with welcoming smiles. "Welcome, young Master Yi," they chirped. My face went completely dark. The urge to pee vanished instantly. I turned tail and bolted out of there like the place was on fire. "Boss, what happened?" Ji Lingyu called out, looking confused. "Fine, I'll go to the damn gala," I shouted back. If I stayed in this house another hour, I was going to die of a ruptured bladder. "That's the spirit," Ji Lingyu cheered. "There's going to be some top-tier stuff there. High-level gear, rare skill books, the works." I paused. "Wait, they sell skills there?" "Of course. Qing City holds this auction every year before the exams. The commoners just don't know about it." I went quiet. In this city, I wasn't even a commoner. I was a ghost. I agreed to go, but I refused to wear their fancy suit. It felt stiff and fake. I stuck to my own clothes. Comfort over class, every time. As evening fell, Ji Fu took us to the Yunsheng Hotel, the most luxurious spot in the city. The entrance was a sea of supercars. The moment the guards saw Ji Fu, they practically prostrated themselves. The Ji Group was a titan in this town. We took the elevator to the penthouse. It was a different world. Long tables were stacked with exotic delicacies. Men in tailored suits and women in sparkling gowns mingled, sipping wine. These were the power players, business moguls, high-level awakened, and top government officials. Jifu immediately vanished into a circle of old friends. The old guys have their circle, we have ours, Jiling said, pointing to a group of younger elites. Come on, I'll introduce you. Go ahead, I said, my stomach growling. Don't mind me. I hadn't eaten more than 2 bites at lunch because of the maids breathing down my neck. I ignored Jiling and headed straight for the food. While everyone else was nibbling on tiny appetizers with silver forks, I started devouring a lobster like a starving wolf. People started staring. The whispers began almost immediately. I looked like a homeless man who had crashed a royal wedding. Jiling's face turned bright red. He shuffled over, trying to block me from view. Boss, maybe we can eat later? Let me introduce you to my friends first. Not now. I mumbled through a mouthful of steak. I'm hungry. Boss, please. I'll buy you whatever you want later. Just stop eating for 5 minutes. He was desperate. He could feel the judgment of his peers crashing down on him. He actually reached out to grab the lobster out of my hand. I looked him dead in the eye. My gaze went cold. Forbidden curse. Jiling froze. The blood drained from his face, and he stayed locked in place with a terrified, awkward smile. Sorry, boss, he whispered, his voice trembling. Keep eating. Enjoy yourself. He backed away, nearly tripping over his own feet. He looked like he wanted to cry. He had brought me here to show me off, to make himself look powerful. Instead, his boss was currently treating a 5-star gala like an all-you-can-eat buffet. If he told anyone we were together now, he'd be the laughingstock of the city's rich kids for the next decade. I didn't care. The lobster was delicious. Let them stare. I had a curse in my pocket and immortality in my veins. Their opinions meant nothing to me. Filling my stomach was the only thing that mattered. I was happily devouring my food when a cold, feminine voice rang out behind me. Yilin. I turned around, still chewing on a piece of lobster. Zhuge and I stood there, her face a mask of pure shock. Next to her was a petite girl in a white dress. She was half a head shorter than Zhuge and I, but her face was just as stunning. It really is you, Zhuge and I said. A look of pure disgust washed over her face. How did you even get in here? Don't tell me you snuck in just to scavenge for free food and drinks. I didn't bother responding. I just thought to myself how unlucky I was. No matter where I went, I couldn't seem to escape this brainless woman. Then again, considering her father's status, it wasn't surprising to see her at a gala like this. And I, who is he? The girl in the white dress asked curiously. She had never seen Zhuge and I look so openly repulsed by someone. Even when dealing with the most persistent, annoying suitors, Zhuge and I usually kept her composure. Who is he? Just a coward who's afraid of death, Zhuge and I snapped. She turned to her friend. Remember that Linyi I told you about? The one who saved me. The girl nodded. Of course. You said he controlled black flames and was incredibly powerful. He killed a level 8 monster on his very first night in the novice zone. Well, I met this guy before I met Linyi, Zhuge and I said, glaring at me with gritted teeth. His strength isn't weak, but he's gutless. If he had helped me fight that level 8 dragon-blooded beast, I wouldn't have been pushed to the brink of death. But he just abandoned me and ran away. I ignored her completely and focused on my steak. The girl in white tilted her head. But isn't it human instinct to avoid danger? He might be a coward, but is that really enough to make you this angry? Lu Yanwei. Zhuge and I shouted the girl's name, puffing out her cheeks. Whose side are you on? Yours. Lu Yanwei said, sticking out her tongue playfully. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been trapped by that beast, Zhuge and I continued. I wouldn't have looked so pathetic when I met Linyi. And because Linyi saw me as a burden, he left, and now I can't find any trace of him. Tell me, shouldn't I be angry? Okay, that is frustrating, Lu Yanwei agreed. She knew exactly how obsessed Zhuge and I had been over the last 2 days, practically turning Qing City upside down to find this mysterious Linyi. Fine, if he makes you mad, let's just ignore him. Out of sight, out of mind. Let's go over there. Lu Yanwei pushed Zhuge and I toward the other side of the room to prevent a scene. As they walked away, Zhuge and I shot me one last vicious glare. I felt a sudden flash of dark amusement. It turned out my Lin Yi persona had left quite an impression on her. I wondered what her face would look like if she ever found out that the hero she was hunting for was the same coward she despised. The thought passed quickly. I didn't want that little girl clinging to me. The further away she stayed, the better. Once I was full, I found a quiet corner to sit and wait for the auction to begin. I was actually interested in the equipment and skills Jiling you had mentioned. I didn't need skills, but my equipment slots were empty, except for a single ring that gave me 10 points of spirit. That wouldn't cut it during the national exam. The exam would be conducted under the watchful eyes of the public. I couldn't just go around dropping forbidden curses on every monster I saw like I did in the novice zone. People would get suspicious. But there was a problem. I wanted gear, but I had zero money. I looked over at Jiling Yu. Maybe it was time to sell him a dream and get some free stuff. As if he could read my mind, Jiling Yu walked over with a large group of people in tow. Everyone, let me introduce you. This is my boss, Yilin. He had waited until I finished eating before daring to bring his friends over. The group looked at me with deep skepticism. Are you joking, Ling Yu? One of them asked. It would make sense if he called you boss. But you're calling him boss. They looked at my cheap clothes, which stood out like a sore thumb in this luxury hall. They couldn't understand what Jiling Yu was thinking. Jiling Yu gave a mysterious smile. These friends were all rich second-generation kids from Qing City. It was natural for them to look down on me. Don't judge a book by its cover, Jiling Yu said smugly. A normal person wouldn't be qualified to be my boss. But he's different. Do you know what level he is? What level? Someone asked. Level 16, Jiling Yu announced. And his class is SSS rank. The crowd gasped. The disdain in their eyes vanished instantly, replaced by shock. In this world, the strong earned respect regardless of their clothes. I knew that name sounded familiar, someone exclaimed. He's the one who took first place in the novice zone and broke the Qing City record. Coming out of a novice zone at level 8 or 9 was considered genius. Level 16 was unheard of. It was terrifying. Jiling Yu folded his arms, soaking in the reaction. This was exactly the effect he wanted. No one would mock him for following me now. Seeing that he had finished showing off, I decided to start my pitch. Jiling Yu, are you confident about getting a good score in the national exam? Not really, he admitted honestly. I'm only level 7. I'll be lucky to get into a decent university. That's a shame, I sighed. If only we could go outside the city. I could help you level up a bit so you could get a better result. That's impossible, boss, Jiling Yu said, shaking his head. To prevent people from being carried by high-level players, no one is allowed to leave the city for 3 days after the novice trial ends. Is that so? I asked pointedly. Then why did I hear that the path to the national exam trial is located outside the city walls? Jiling Yu's breath hitched. Boss, you mean? The 4 gates of Qing City would open when the national exam began. Students had to cross a stretch of wilderness to reach the entrance of the exam portal. It was the very first test. While there weren't many monsters near the walls, they did exist. Most students just sprinted through that area as fast as possible to reach the portal. But I was suggesting something else. I was suggesting we use that path as a private hunting ground. And we were standing right outside the gates of opportunity. The wilderness outside the city was a different beast entirely compared to the novice trial grounds. In the novice trial, the strongest monsters capped out at level 10, and you only found them in the deepest areas. Outside the walls, level 10 was the bare minimum. It was a place where people lost their lives every single day. The number of awakened who ended up in the bellies of monsters each year was staggering. Don't forget, I'm already level 16, I said, leaning in slightly. As long as we stay close to the walls, I doubt we'll run into anything I can't handle. The only problem is my lack of gear. If I had proper equipment, I could definitely carry you through some levels before the national exam officially starts. I let out a long, theatrical sigh. I needed to look like I was struggling with a problem. Gear? That's easy, Jiling Yu said, waving his hand dismissively. Then his expression flickered with hesitation. But boss, I'm still worried about our safety. That's the real wilderness we're talking about. He was right to be scared. If the G family sent high-level bodyguards, he wouldn't blink. But relying solely on a level 16 kid like me was a massive gamble. Look at me, I said, my voice firm and ringing with confidence. I wouldn't suggest this if I wasn't certain. Even if we encounter something I can't beat, I promise you one thing. I will die before you do. I watched his eyes widen. I had to push harder. Don't you want to raise your level? Don't you want to get into a top-tier university? You know as well as I do that some things can't be bought with money. Yu looked at me with a touch of guilt in his eyes. I knew what he was thinking. He thought he was just using me, treating me like a disposable forbidden curse user who would protect him for free. But he quickly hardened his gaze. His father had taught him long ago that business was ruthless. In his mind, I was already destined for a short life. By giving me a taste of luxury before I burned out, he felt he was doing me a favor. He was a merchant at heart, and profit always came first. He knew I was right about one thing, though. Money couldn't buy a spot in a top academy. In the Great Xia dynasty, the only way in was through the national exam trials. There were no shortcuts. Boss, Yu said, his voice steady now. Don't worry. Tell me whatever you want at the auction tonight. I'll make sure it's yours. Good, I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. That's what I wanted to hear. With the right gear, I guarantee I'll get you past level 10. If he hit level 10 and put in the effort during the trials, he could basically pick any elite university in the country. We looked at each other and smiled, both of us convinced we were getting the better end of the deal. As the auction began, the sun dipped below the horizon. Yu's circle of wealthy friends watched us with pure envy. A level 16 SSS-CLASS powerhouse was willing to risk his life to power level Yu. To them, it looked like he had hit the jackpot. They went from thinking he was crazy for following me to wishing they could be my lackeys too. Who wouldn't want to jump from level 7 to 10 for free? Wait here, boss. I need to clear this with my dad, Yu said. He headed toward Jifu. This was a high-end gala, and he needed the old man's wallet to secure the best items. A few minutes later, he returned, looking much more confident. It's all set. Whatever you pick, I've got it. I nodded. An Awakened could use 6 pieces of equipment at once. There were no restrictions on type. If you wanted to wear 6 rings or carry 6 swords, you could. But for most people, even finding 6 pieces that actually suited their class was nearly impossible. It was a massive money sink. Without a benefactor like Yu, I'd be stuck working for someone else just to afford a decent blade. Suddenly, the lights cut out. The entire hall plunged into total darkness. No one panicked. They were used to this theatricality. A single spotlight snapped onto the center stage, revealing a stunning woman in a classic cheapao. Her curves were breathtaking, and her subtle makeup highlighted a face that could steal a man's soul. Every man in the room stared with varying degrees of greed, but no one dared to make a move. This was the Treasure Pavilion, the largest auction house in Great Xia. They had branches in every major city. Offending their hostess, Ching, was a death sentence for one's social standing. We won't waste time, Ching said, her voice smooth as silk. As always, we have 100 items tonight. The first 50 are skill scrolls, and the last 50 are equipment. She clapped her hands, and a tray holding a bundle of scrolls was brought out. Item number 1, an epic grade fire skill scroll for mages. Starting bid is 500,000, with increments of 10,000. The room erupted in whispers. Skills were ranked as common, rare, epic, and legend. Starting with an epic scroll meant the Treasure Pavilion was going all out this year. While you could only wear 6 pieces of gear, there was no limit to how many skills you could learn. That was why being an Awakened was so expensive. A fully geared player with a massive library of high-level skills could easily slaughter 10 others of the same level who were poorly equipped. 510,000, 550,000. The bids flew fast. The price quickly cleared the 1 million mark. I watched in shock, realizing that in this room, money was just a number. Fortunately, as a forbidden curse user, I didn't need scrolls. I unlocked new powers just by leveling up. Even if I wanted to use them, my class wouldn't allow it. My only output was destruction. Finally, the hammer fell when Old Man Zhuge Qianqing shouted out a bid of 3 million. Old Man Zhuge Qianqing successfully claimed the epic scroll. No one dared to challenge him further. 3 million was already a steep price, and in a place like Qingcheng, nobody wanted to offend a master like Zhuge unless they absolutely had to. Ching Ching smiled elegantly as she congratulated him. Then, she signaled for the second item. It was a rare-grade skill scroll containing a sword technique. The starting bid was 100,000, with $10,000 increments. Even though it wasn't as high level as the first one, a sword skill always drew a crowd. The price climbed steadily until it settled at 800,000. After watching a few more items go by, I lost interest. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes to rest. The first 50 items were all skill scrolls. Even if a legendary skill appeared, it had nothing to do with me. My Forbidden Curse class didn't allow for outside skills anyway. My only output was pure destruction. Ji Lingyu, however, was busy. She managed to snag 2 skills she liked. Her class was an A-rank Shadow Blade, and she was the one who walked away with that rare sword technique. "All right, everyone," Ching Ching said, her voice dripping with charm. "The 50 skill scrolls are all sold. If you missed out, don't worry. Next, we move on to equipment." She clapped, and the first piece of gear was brought out. It was covered with a red cloth. Based on the size, it looked like a ring, a necklace, or a bracelet. Everyone leaned forward, their eyes glued to the stage. But the price was terrifying. 8 million was just the start. Based on the scrolls, this would easily hit 20 million. I did the math in my head. I'd have to sell my organs 666 times to afford this. Even with my immortal body, that sounded ridiculous. Luckily, I had Ji Fu. 9 million. Ji Fu shouted immediately, jumping the price by a full million. The competition didn't back down. The bids started flying. 9.2 million, 10 million, 12 million. Everyone knew a rare item was a treasure you couldn't buy in Qingcheng even if you had the money. Ji Fu spoke up again, his voice firm. 15 million. The room went quiet. He had just raised the bid by 3 million in one go. It was clear the G group was determined to win. A few more bids trickled in, but the momentum was gone. When Ji Fu hit 18 million, the room fell silent. 18 million for a rare item was fair. Going higher was just bad business. Ji Fu smiled. To him, 18 million was a small price to pay to get his son into a top university. Even though he was buying this for me, he knew Forbidden Curse users didn't live long. In a few years, when I kicked the bucket, this ring would just go back to his son anyway. 18 million once, Ching Ching announced. 18 million twice. 18 million. 20 million. A lazy, arrogant voice cut through the air. Everyone froze and turned around. It was one thing to outbid someone, but waiting until the very last second was a blatant insult. Someone was trying to pick a fight with the G group. Ji Fu's face darkened instantly. His eyes turned sharp as a hawk's. But when he saw the bidder, he froze. It was a portly man with slicked back hair and a fake, kind smile. Kinsun, the king of the underground. The room started whispering. The G group and Kinsun lived in 2 different worlds. They had no reason to clash. Was this a mistake, or was it personal? Kinsun hadn't made a big move in years, but everyone knew he was the undisputed boss of the city's dark side. Ji Fu was baffled. He'd barely even met the man. He forced a polite smile. "Mr. Kinsun, I hope I haven't offended you in some way." Kinsun chuckled, looking like a friendly uncle. "President Ji, what are you saying? It's an auction. The highest bidder wins. Can I like this yellow dragon Rui ring too?" Kinsun didn't look like a king of the underworld. He had slicked back hair and a portly frame, wearing a fake, friendly smile that made him look like a harmless uncle. But as he sat there, his eyes scanned the room and landed on me. He didn't say a word, but I felt the chill. He was looking at me like I was a piece of evidence. He probably thought the G group was using me as a front. I stared right back at him. Our eyes met in the air, cold and sharp. Ji Fu sat between us, completely oblivious to the silent war. He just thought Kinsun really wanted that ring. Ji Fu tried to test the waters. He raised the bid to 21 million. The room went quiet for a heartbeat. Then, just as the auctioneer was about to close the deal, Kinsun chimed in again. He bumped it to 22 million. It was a pattern now. My heart sank for Ji Fu. It was obvious Kinsun wasn't here for the jewelry. He was hunting the G group. Ji Fu wasn't a coward, but he was a businessman. He didn't want a war with a man like Kinsun if he could avoid it. He leaned over, acting respectful. He asked Kinsun what he had done to offend him. He wanted a clear explanation. Kinsun's smile vanished instantly. The mask dropped, revealing a face of pure ice. He leaned into Ji-Fu's ear, his voice a low, dangerous growl. He told Ji-Fu he had guts for asking that after killing his men. He promised Ji-Fu that his family would be ruined and his house would be empty. I almost wanted to laugh. Kinson was convinced the Ji group had ordered the hit on his men at the farm. To him, the fact that Ji Lingyu picked me up right after I burned the place down was proof enough. He thought Ji-Fu was playing dumb to insult him. Ji-Fu, on the other hand, was completely lost. He had no idea what Kinson was talking about, but he understood the threat. His face went pale, then turned a deep, angry red. He had tried to be polite, but Kinson was threatening his family. The Ji group wasn't some soft fruit you could just squeeze. Ji-Fu stopped playing nice. He shouted out a bid of 30 million. The room gasped. 30 million for a rare item was insane. You could almost buy a low-quality epic item for that kind of money. But Ji-Fu didn't care about the price anymore. He had more money than Kinson ever would, and he wanted to prove it. Kinson's eyes turned murderous. Even for him, 30 million for a ring was a painful price to match. He stayed silent, and the hammer fell. Ji-Fu won, but there was no joy in his eyes. He knew he had just started a blood feud with a mad dog. I saw my chance to steer the narrative. I leaned in and told Ji-Fu to look past the surface. I told him that when someone wants to destroy you, even a missing button is enough of an excuse for war. I suggested that Kinson didn't care about his dead men. He just wanted an excuse to swallow the Ji group and go legitimate. I watched the cold sweat bead on Ji-Fu's forehead. He realized that if Kinson was planning a takeover, the man wouldn't stop until everything was gone. He looked at me with genuine gratitude. He thought I was a genius for seeing the truth he had missed. He felt so bad for me, a poor kid caught in the crossfire, that he told me to move into the Ji estate permanently. I smiled, showing all my teeth, and thanked him. I promised him I'd make sure his son got into a top university, even if I had to carry him there myself. Ji-Fu handed me the yellow dragon Rui ring. The moment I slipped it onto my finger, a wave of warmth washed over me. It felt like soaking in a hot bath during a blizzard. I checked the stats. It gave me a 30% boost to my spirit attribute. That was massive. But the real prize was the Dragon Chi skill. It increased my luck by 10%. Luck was a mysterious thing in this world. With high luck, you could fall off a cliff and find a secret manual. With bad luck, you could get hit by a bus while standing on the sidewalk. A 10% boost was priceless. The rest of the auction was a nightmare for Ji-Fu's wallet. Every time he bid on a piece of gear, Kinson pushed the price through the roof. Ji-Fu ended up paying double for everything just to keep Kinson from winning. I watched Kinson's face grow darker with every lost bid. He was convinced he was fighting the masterminds behind his men's deaths. He had no idea the real killer was sitting right across from him, wearing his new ring and smiling. The auctioneer, Ching Ching, didn't do a single thing to stop the bidding war. She just stood there with a professional smile. Why would she stop it? The higher the price went, the more profit the treasure pavilion made. They weren't in the business of playing peacemaker. By the time the dust settled on the mid-tier items, Ji-Fu had secured a massive haul for me. He bought me the Azure Sky Thunder Ring, which boosted my spirit by 15% and gave me a 20% power buff to all lightning skills. Then came the twin yin-yang bracelets. These were incredible. They boosted my spirit by 40%, but the real prize was their passive skill. When worn together, they provided a constant stream of healing energy. I want that blade. Ji-Fu blinked. Even Ji Lingyu looked baffled. Boss, you're a forbidden curse mage, he whispered. What do you need a sword for? I have a specific curse, I replied vaguely. It requires a blade to trigger. I didn't feel like explaining the details. Back in the novice dungeon, I had unlocked a new forbidden curse called the Lifespan Slicing Art. It was a terrifying skill. Every time I swung the blade, it consumed 1 year of my remaining life. In exchange, the damage of each consecutive strike doubled, stacking up to 99 times. For anyone else, this was a suicide move. You'd be dead before you hit the 10th swing. But for me, I had infinite life. I could swing that blade until the sun went down. My physical strength was low, only 160 points, but if I stacked that damage 99 times, the final number would be a string of digits so long it looked like a glitch in the system. I'd be dealing tens of billions of damage per hit. I'd be a walking one-shot machine. The only problem was the hardware. I had tried practicing with a regular kitchen knife back at my shack, and the blade snapped in half after just 2 swings. I needed something that could handle the raw power of a forbidden curse. She pulled Juga and I aside and whispered the news. The Bureau of Investigation had found traces of a unique black flame at a burned-down farmhouse. It matched the description of Ling Yi, my secret alter ego. They wanted Juga and I to come in and help with the investigation. Juga and I was stunned. Ling Yi a murderer? She couldn't believe it. If he was a ruthless killer, why would he have saved her life back in the novice dungeon? She grabbed her friend's arm. Wei Wei, take me to the scene right now. The 2 girls drove quickly to the farmhouse I had incinerated. The entire place was completely gone, reduced to a wasteland of charred, dark brown earth. Juga and I stepped out of the car, her face pale with uncertainty. As an SSS-CLASS fire mage, she was incredibly sensitive to fire elements. The lingering aura here was identical to the hellfire she had felt before. It was definitely Ling Yi. There was no doubt about it. But she couldn't understand why he did it. The city had strict laws. Even awakened professionals weren't allowed to just slaughter people inside the walls. Breaking that rule meant arrest, or even instant execution by the Bureau. The crime scene was already cordoned off. A middle-aged investigator approached them. It was Officer Huang. He didn't waste any time and pulled out his notepad. He asked Juga and I if she had met a man named Ling Yi who could summon hellfire and instantly kill an 8-level monster. She confirmed it. He asked if she knew where to find him. She admitted she was looking for him too, but he had completely vanished. Then, Officer Huang shifted his gaze. The slums were dangerous at night. A few thugs tried to corner Juga and I and her friend Wei Wei as they walked, but a single fireball from Juga and I sent them running for their lives. No one messed with an awakened professional. Eventually, they stopped in front of a dilapidated shack. Juga and I froze. She could feel it. The lingering aura of that dark fire vanished right here. This was Ling Ye's home. She stared at the door, her heart racing. The man she had been thinking about day and night was right behind that wood. She reached out to knock, then stopped. She hurriedly smoothed her clothes and fixed her hair. Wei Wei, is my makeup okay? She whispered. Wei Wei rolled her eyes. You look fine. You look great. Juga and I took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and knocked. The sound echoed through the quiet night. 1 minute passed. 2, 3. There was no answer. She tried again, pushing a bit harder, and the door simply swung open. I never had a habit of locking my door. I had nothing worth stealing. If a thief broke into my place, they'd probably leave crying and drop $200 out of pity. Juga and I stepped inside, her voice trembling. Ling Yi, are you home? Silence. The room was empty. She looked around at the blackened table, the 3-legged stool, and the rusted iron bed frame. The blankets were washed so many times they had lost all their color. It was a hollow shell of a home. Jugani's eyes turned red. Her lower lip trembled. She realized that I had grown up in this misery. To her, it explained my coldness and the way I kept everyone at a distance. She imagined the hardships I must have faced. Even living like this, she whispered to herself, he didn't hesitate to save me. He lives in the darkness, but his heart is full of light. She was convinced now. If I had killed those people, it must have been out of necessity. Someone as kind and pure as me couldn't be a cold-blooded murderer. I had no idea Juga and I was busy turning me into a saint in her head. I also didn't realize how close I had come to being caught. If I hadn't moved into the G family mansion, she would have walked right into me. Right now, I was preoccupied with my new gear. My combat power had easily doubled, and I was itching to test it out. But the city was under lockdown. I couldn't go to the novice dungeons or leave the city walls. Boss, I know a place. Jiling Yu said when I told him I needed to train. Where? I asked. The Professionals Association. They have private training rooms built specifically for combat testing. He explained that the association was a government-run institution found in every major city. They handled everything: materials, equipment trading, quests, and high-end training. It was the hub for everyone who had awakened. I couldn't wait. I made Jiling Yu turn the car around and head straight there. The association building was massive. As soon as we walked in, a receptionist in a professional suit and black stockings greeted us with a smile. "Good evening. Are you here for combat training?" "Not me," Jiling said, waving his hands. "My boss." She looked at me. "May I know your level, sir?" I let my aura show. When she saw I was level 16, she smiled sweetly. "Understood. I'll arrange a room suitable for professionals under level 20. The price is 200,000 per hour." I winced. 200,000 an hour? Being a professional was a rich man's game. Luckily, I had Jiling's wallet. "Can you give me a room for level 40 instead?" I asked. The receptionist blinked, surprised, but she nodded quickly. "Of course. But the price for a level 40 room is 800,000 per hour." "That's fine. I'll take it." She didn't ask questions. If I could pay, she would provide. She turned on her heels and disappeared, returning a moment later with a key card. "Stay out here," I told Jiling. "I don't want to accidentally hit you." Jiling remembered the lightning strike from earlier and shivered. "No problem, boss. I'll wait right here." I followed the receptionist to the training hall. The room was huge, the size of a basketball court, with a row of reinforced dummies in the center. She explained that the room was built by SSS-CLASS architects using special materials. It could withstand full-power attacks from anyone under level 40. Even leaving a scratch on the dummies was supposed to be nearly impossible for someone my level. "Do you need a sparring partner?" she asked. "No, I want to be alone." I didn't need anyone seeing what I was about to do. She bowed and closed the door behind her. I walked over, locked it from the inside, and scanned the room for cameras or recording devices. Once I was sure I was alone, I drew my new blade, the Nebula Sky Scar. My new skill, the longevity sword technique, consumed 1 year of my lifespan per strike. For anyone else, it was a suicide move. For me, it was just another Tuesday. "Let's see what 100 years of life gets me," I muttered. I took a deep breath and gripped the hilt. I activated my forbidden curse, burning reincarnation, to fuel my power, and then triggered the longevity sword technique. My vision sharpened. The world slowed down. I swung. The first strike hit the air with a deafening boom. The room shook as if the walls were being torn apart. A brilliant, blinding light erupted from the blade, the physical manifestation of my burning life force. I didn't stop. The second strike was faster. The third was even more violent. The air in the room was being sliced into ribbons, creating invisible shock waves of pure energy. By the time I reached the 99th strike, the entire facility was trembling. The energy levels were off the charts. Then came the 100th. The blade let out a roar that sounded like the world ending. A pillar of light filled the room, erasing everything else from sight. I felt the power coursing through me, a raw, terrifying force that no level 16 professional should ever possess. This wasn't just training anymore. This was a statement. An invisible blade of energy erupted from my sword. It sliced through the air and struck the training dummy's neck, leaving a shallow, distinct mark. If anyone else had been in the room, their jaw would have hit the floor. This wasn't just any dummy. It was built to withstand the full force attacks of professionals up to level 40. I was only level 16, but I wasn't finished. 100 strikes. 101. 102. I swung again and again, the momentum building into a rhythmic storm. Once my longevity sword technique stacked to 99 layers, every single swing carried a terrifying, apocalyptic weight. In that moment, I wasn't just a student, I was a god of war. After several hundred strikes, a sharp crack echoed through the hall. The head of the dummy, the one supposed to be indestructible to anyone under level 40, snapped clean off. It hit the floor and rolled away like a useless toy. "Good sword," I whispered, wiping the sweat from my forehead. I looked at the Nebula Sky Scar with newfound respect. With this blade, combined with my burning reincarnation and longevity sword technique, I felt like I could cut a path from the lowest slums all the way to the gates of heaven. I didn't stop there. I needed to know what I was truly capable of now that I had my new gear, the Yellow Dragon Rui Ring, the Mysterious Thunder Ring, the Yin-Yang Twin Bracelets, and the Burning Moon Necklace. I decided to go all out. I triggered a forbidden curse, sacrificing every single one of my internal organs in a single, violent burst of power. The dummy I had just decapitated didn't just break. It disintegrated. The metal and padding exploded into a cloud of fine dust and jagged fragments. Even I felt a chill run down my spine. I had underestimated myself. If I stopped holding back, if I didn't have to worry about people seeing my body instantly knit itself back together, I could probably take down level 50 professionals right now. I spent the next hour cycling through my different forbidden curses on the remaining dummies. Once I had a solid grasp of my new limits, I wiped my face and walked out of the training room, acting as casual as possible. "Out so soon?" the receptionist asked with a polite smile. "Just so you know, even if you use less than an hour, we still charge for the full 60 minutes. "I know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "By the way, if I accidentally broke something in there, I don't have to pay for it, right?" She laughed, shaking her head. "Sir, that room is designed for high-level professionals. You're level 16. If you actually manage to damage anything, it would mean our equipment is defective. We wouldn't dream of charging you." "Good to hear," I said, feeling a weight lift off my chest. "I'll be going then." I grabbed Jilingyu, and we bolted for the exit before she could change her mind. A few minutes later, the receptionist walked into the room to tidy up. At first glance, everything looked fine. She smiled to herself, thinking how ridiculous it was for a kid to think he could break a reinforced training hall. But as she looked closer, her smile vanished. "Wait," she whispered, her eyes widening. "The dummies. Where are the dummies?" The entire row of high-grade targets was gone, replaced by nothing but scorched marks on the floor and a pile of gray ash. While I was testing my strength, a different kind of storm was breaking over the G family estate. Outside the mansion, 2 guards, one fat, one thin, were shivering in the night air, sharing a cigarette. They were low-level professionals, the kind who chose guard duty because it was high pay and low risk. They didn't have the guts to fight monsters outside the city walls, so they spent their nights gossiping and slacking off. "Man, it's freezing," the fat guard grunted. "This smoke is making my stomach turn. I gotta go hit the bushes." "Use the bathroom, you pig," the thin guard complained, looking disgusted. "You don't get it," the fat one retorted, walking toward a thick patch of landscaping. "Out here, I can commune with nature while I do my business." He squatted down in the dark greenery, but his face went pale instantly. A man is never more vulnerable than when he's answering the call of nature. As he looked around, he realized the bushes weren't empty. They were packed with men in black, eyes cold and blades drawn. Before he could scream, a massive hand clamped over his mouth. A cold blade slid into his lower back, twisting deep. He felt his life force draining into the dirt. Back at the gate, the thin guard noticed the cigarette cherry go out too quickly. "Fatty, you okay?" he called out. The men in the bushes cursed under their breath. They had planned a silent ambush, but this idiot's sudden bathroom break had ruined the timing. Seeing they were spotted, they didn't wait any longer. They surged out of the shadows like a dark tide. "Enemy attack!" the thin guard screamed, slamming the emergency alarm. He didn't stay to fight. He wasn't getting paid enough to die. He turned and sprinted into the darkness, leaving the mansion to fend for itself. Inside, the lights flickered on as the alarm blared. Ji-Fu bolted upright in bed, his heart hammering against his ribs. Before he could even reach for his clothes, a guard specializing in speed burst into the room. "Boss, we're under attack," the guard gasped. "They're already inside. They're too strong. We can't hold them. You have to move now." Ji-Fu's face twisted in rage. He knew exactly who this was. Kinson's retaliation was faster and more brutal than he had anticipated. He had just finished planning his move against Kinson's company, and now the man was literally at his bedroom door. "He's insane," Ji-Fu hissed. "Does he think he can just storm a private residence without consequences?" "Boss, please. We have to go," the guard urged. Suddenly, a flash of cold steel erupted from the guard's chest. He gasped, his eyes glazing over as a blade pierced his heart from behind. Kinson stepped out of the shadows, calmly puffing on a cigar, his eyes cold and murderous. "Shaoli!" Ji-Fu screamed, his voice breaking. Years ago, Ji-Fu had found a starving, skeletal boy on the streets. While everyone else walked past, Ji-Fu had stopped and handed the boy a bowl of hot noodles. He had adopted him, raised him, and watched him grow into his most loyal lieutenant. Shaoli felt his life slipping away, but he didn't fall. With his final ounce of strength, He spun around and threw his arms around Kinson, pinning the assassin's arms to his sides. "Are you that eager to die?" Kinson growled, trying to shake him off. Shaoli spat blood, a jagged, terrifying grin forming on his face. "My life was worth a bowl of noodles. I've already lived long enough." "Truly touching master-servant loyalty," Kinson said, his face a mask of cold indifference. "I respect those with honor. I'll leave your body in one piece." He didn't hesitate. With a casual flick of his wrist, a sickening crack echoed through the room. He snapped Shaoli's neck like a dry twig. "Kinson," Ji-Fu roared. His eyes were bloodshot, fueled by a rage so intense it felt like his heart might burst. He lunged for a drawer, pulled out a black handgun, and squeezed the trigger. But before the hammer could even drop, a flash of cold steel cut through the air like a bolt of lightning. Ji-Fu stared in disbelief. His hand, still gripping the gun, was flying through the air, trailing a spray of crimson. "Using a gun against a class user? What kind of idiot are you?" Kinson laughed, his voice dripping with disdain. "Guns work fine on rookies who just awakened. But once you hit level 30, they're nothing but toys." Kinson raised his blade, ready to finish the job. "In your next life, remember not to cross me. I was laying low, not dead." Just then, a subordinate rushed in and whispered something in Kinson's ear. Kinson's expression shifted instantly. "What? They escaped?" Kinson snarled, backhanding the messenger so hard the man hit the floor. He lowered his sword, looking back at Ji-Fu with a cruel smile. "President Ji, congratulations. Your son and that brat Yi Lin were fast enough to run. You get to live a little longer." Kinson realized he couldn't kill Ji-Fu yet. If he did, he'd be cutting off the boy's only weakness. To pull up weeds, you have to dig out the roots. He didn't want someone coming back for revenge 10 years down the line. He would use the father to lure the two boys out and slaughter them all together. "Don't even think about it." Ji-Fu spat. He was an old fox. He knew exactly what Kinson was planning. He lunged toward the corner of the wall, intending to crack his own skull open. His son was his only concern, and he refused to be the bait that led him to his death. But Kinson was faster. Before Ji-Fu could hit the wall, a heavy hand struck the back of his neck, knocking him unconscious. "Take him away," Kinson ordered. In less than half an hour, the Ji family villa was silent. Everyone except Ji-Fu was now a cold corpse. By dawn, the name of Kinson, the underground king, would be feared once again. I arrived back at the villa gates just after finishing my power tests. The moment I stepped near, a thick, metallic scent of blood hit me. My pupils shrank. Even with me hiding at the Ji residence, Kinson hadn't let go. He was willing to massacre the entire household just to get to me. I started to suspect he knew my secrets. This man was a lunatic. He couldn't be allowed to live. Ji Lingyu reached for the door, but I blocked his path. "You need to prepare yourself," I said, my voice heavy. "Boss, what are you talking about?" He didn't smell it yet. He pushed past me and stepped inside. He froze. I followed him in and looked at the carnage. It was a slaughterhouse. The bodies of hired guards and servants were scattered everywhere, limbs severed, faces frozen in masks of pure terror. It looked like a demon had torn through the halls. "Boss, did we go to the wrong house?" Ji Lingyu stammered, a forced, trembling smile on his face. He backed away, looking at me, desperate for me to tell him he was wrong. But my expression gave him the truth. This was his home. He snapped. He sprinted into the sea of blood, screaming, "Dad, Dad, where are you?" He was terrified of not finding him, but even more terrified of finding his corpse among the piles of meat. When he reached the master bedroom, he pushed the door open with trembling hands. The room was eerily clean, as if it had been wiped down. The only thing out of place was a severed hand, still clutching a gun, sitting on the desk. Ji Lingyu rushed over. He recognized it instantly. It was his father's hand. Underneath the limb was a piece of paper written in fresh blood. Asterisk, if you want to save your father, bring Yi Lin to the underground black market. Every 6 hours you delay, I'll cut off a piece of him. Asterisk. Ji Lingyu went berserk. "Kinson, I'll kill you," he shrieked, turning to bolt for the door. He knew Kinson was the only one capable of this. I stuck out a foot and tripped him, then kicked him back into the room. "Get out of my way. Don't stop me," he screamed. His eyes were full of a murderous fire. In his mind, anyone stopping him was an enemy. I didn't have time for a breakdown. I stepped forward and slapped him across the face as hard as I could. His cheeks swelled instantly. "Your father is only alive because you haven't been caught yet," I hissed. "The second you fall into Kinson's hands, you both die. Do you understand?" Jiling grit his teeth, tears streaming down his face. He punched the floor repeatedly, letting out a desperate, guttural howl like a cornered beast. "Then what do I do? What can I even do?" "Find a place to hide," I said calmly. "Don't let them find you. Leave the rest to me." He looked up dazed. To you. You called me boss, didn't you?" I gave him a small, grim smile. "Your father is in danger. I'm not going to sit by and watch." "Boss." Jiling's voice broke. Guilt flooded his face. He had been plotting against me from the start, yet here I was, risking everything for him. "Stop crying," I said. "I'll bring him back. I'm going to show Kinson that the times have changed." I headed for the underground black market. It was the filthiest corner of Qing City, a place where money bought anything and life was cheap. People who died here didn't get investigated by the Bureau. It was Kinson's kingdom. I moved through the night like a ghost, a black shadow against a black sky. Kinson had eyes everywhere, so I had to be silent. I wore all black, my face wrapped, blending into the darkness. Even if someone looked right at me, I was just another shadow. I activated Dance of the Instant. My speed surged. Using the momentum, I drove my blade, Starfall, straight through the heart of the first perimeter guard. Before the scent of blood could spread, I used Eye of the Surge to flash freeze the wound. A perfect assassination. The hunt had begun. I finished the kill in total silence. I let out a breath, feeling a wave of relief. The plan was working better than I had expected. If I could keep moving like this, staying invisible in the shadows, I could take Kinson by surprise. I might actually have a real chance to kill him right here, right now. But just as that thought crossed my mind, the world changed. Suddenly, I wasn't alone. Dozens of Kinson's men stepped out from the darkness, surrounding me in a tight circle. I froze, my mind racing. How did they find me? I had been perfect. I had been a ghost. A man with bleached yellow hair and a scorpion tattoo on his neck stepped forward. He looked at me with a smug, arrogant grin and pointed toward the ceiling. Tucked away in the corner was a tiny, high-tech camera. "Kid, the times have changed," the yellow-haired man sneered. "Our surveillance has infrared night vision. It's the 21st century. Who still wears a black ninja suit and expects to hide?" I felt a sting of embarrassment. I had been careless. But it didn't matter. If they found me, I just had to make sure none of them lived to tell about it. As long as I killed everyone here, it would still count as a stealth mission. I activated my forbidden curse, burning Samsara. With my equipment boosting my stats, my mental power sat at a staggering 1,088 points. After activating the curse, that number doubled to 2,176. My senses exploded. My mental energy felt like invisible tentacles, reaching out and feeling every detail of the men in front of me. I could see the sweat on their skin, the fear in their eyes, even the smallest physical flaws. With that terrifying mental power backing me, I unleashed another forbidden curse, Nightfire Heavens. The night sky ignited. For a split second, the thugs saw a light so bright it blinded them. They had no idea what kind of monster they were facing. A stream of searing, violet-red fire erupted from my palm. It was a terrifying flame that looked like it could melt the world itself. The fire spread with unnatural speed. In the blink of an eye, it swallowed everyone. The screams, the pleas for mercy, the sounds of bones snapping. It was all drowned out by the roar of the inferno. The yellow-haired man didn't stand a chance. His hair vanished instantly. He tried to run, his body stumbling through the sea of fire, but the violet flames seemed alive. They chased him down, clinging to his flesh until he collapsed into a pile of ash. I wasn't done. I cast Necrotic Realm. The ground cracked open, and countless undead creatures crawled out, forming a perimeter around the entire underground market. I didn't care about the consequences of killing Kinson anymore. My only priority was making sure no one escaped alive. If a single witness got out, the secret of my immortality would be exposed to the world. Since I was already spotted, I stopped trying to be subtle. I activated my Sun Life blade technique and gripped Starfall. I needed to stack my damage layers. That's him. Grab him, a voice shouted. More of Kinson's men arrived. These weren't low-level thugs like the yellow-haired guy. These were professional class awakeners, all of them above level 20. At that level, a person is no longer ordinary. They are walking weapons, as dangerous as a fully equipped Special Forces unit. One man moved first. He was a speed-based fighter, lunging at me like a live mountain cat. He was fast, but I was faster. With Dance of the Instant active, I stepped directly into his path. His eyes widened when he saw me suddenly standing right in front of him. He reacted quickly, throwing a lightning-fast combination, a left hook, a right kick, and a front thrust. I didn't move. I didn't dodge. I let him hit me on purpose. As his strikes landed, I swung my blade in a clean, horizontal arc. A single strike to the throat. It was neat and efficient. I stumbled back, coughing up a mouthful of blood as his attacks took their toll on my body. The man clutched his neck, his eyes filled with pure horror as blood sprayed through his fingers. He couldn't understand it. He didn't expect me to trade my life just to take his. Something's wrong with this kid. One of his comrades yelled, his face pale. Don't hold back. Beat him half to death first. Then we'll take him in. They grew cautious. They realized that underestimating me meant death. But they were confused. 1 second I was throwing high-level fire spells, and the next I was fighting like a madman with a sword. Old 6, distract him. Old 8, get behind him, their leader barked. The rest of you, charge with me. I ignored their strategy. I was focused on one thing, stacking the layers of my blade technique. A heavy-set fighter reached me first. He threw a punch that carried the force of a sledgehammer, aiming straight for my chest. Again, I stood my ground. Crack. My chest collapsed. I heard the sickening sound of my ribs snapping into pieces. The man's face lit up with joy, thinking he had landed a finishing blow. But then, a flash of cold light crossed his vision. I swung Starfall. For him, the world turned into a beautiful, starlit sky. He saw a meteor trailing across the darkness. Then, the world started spinning. He saw a headless body standing in front of him, blood geysering from the neck. Wait, that's my body, was his last thought before everything went black. He has to be at his limit now, a man with a long, horse-like face wailed, looking at his fallen friend. Go? He's badly hurt. He can't keep this up. Another swordsman lunged forward. His blade was a blur in the night, cold and precise. He drove the steel deep into my chest, piercing my lung. Don't worry, the swordsman hissed, leaning in close. My aim is perfect. This won't kill you, but you're finished. If you move, the pain in your lungs will paralyze you. He didn't get to finish his sentence. My blade was already moving. My Sun Life stacks had reached 70 layers. The power was monstrous. With one swing, the swordsman was cleaved in two. Old 7, the horse-faced man screamed again, his voice cracking with desperation. Get him. He's been stabbed through the lung. There's no way he can still fight. Suddenly, a cold glint appeared in the dark. A spear thrust forward like a silver dragon, aiming straight for my heart. A spearman charged at me, his weapon glowing with a cold light. Before I could react, the tip drove straight through my chest, coming out the other side. I didn't even flinch. My response was simple. I swung my blade, fueled by 75 stacks of my Sun Life technique. Blood sprayed from my mouth as the strike landed, but I didn't stop until his life force vanished. Old 11. Quick, get him! The horse-faced man shrieked again. He's definitely done for this time. Another man stepped forward, his hands weaving through complex seals. The air around me suddenly turned violent, roaring like a trapped beast. Invisible pressure gathered into sharp, jagged blades of wind. They whistled through the air, aimed directly at my throat. I stood there, a solitary figure against the storm. I didn't move. I didn't dodge. Squelch. The sound of metal tearing through flesh echoed in the dark. By all laws of medicine, I should have been in an ICU bed breathing through a tube. Instead, I was jumping around like I'd just had a shot of espresso. He's just having a final burst of energy before death, the leader screamed, though he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Kill him. Now. This time, they didn't take chances. 3 of them attacked at once from different angles. One was the wind user, another a swordsman, and the third a fire mage. The air turned into a furnace as flames and wind merged into a wall of death. But my Sun Life stacks had finally reached 99. I was done playing defense. Forbidden curse, momentary being. I sacrificed one of my hearts. In exchange, my agility surged tenfold. I became a blur of light, a streak of silver cutting through the sea of fire. Before the mages could even blink, I was standing in their shadow. Slash, slash. 2 more bodies hit the dirt, still warm, their throats opened wide. With 99 stacks of power, they never stood a chance once I got close. Old 2, Old 4, the horse-faced man was down to his last few nerves. Suddenly, 2 shadows flickered behind me. It was the swordsman and another hidden assassin, Old 8. The swordsman buried his blade into my shoulder, while Old 8 drove a jagged dagger straight into my kidney. Another fatal blow. You really think that's enough to kill me? I whispered. I spun my blade behind me in a clean, effortless arc. Both their heads rolled into the grass before they could even pull their weapons out. Old 3, Old 8. The horse-faced man's voice was a pathetic whimper. He was the only one left. He stared at me, a monster with a sword in my chest, a spear in my lung, a blade in my back, and a dagger in my kidney, walking toward him step by step. Monster, you're a monster, he shrieked, stumbling backward. How are you still alive? What are you? I tilted my head, the movement causing the spear in my chest to rattle. Monster? That's not entirely wrong. I only keep this human shape because it's a personal preference. It was the truth. Long ago, I realized that as long as I had my immortal body, I could be chopped into 100 pieces and stitched back together into a blob of meat, and I'd still be conscious. But after being human for so long, I found this form more convenient. I moved like a flash. With 2 quick strikes, I severed the horse-faced man's hamstrings and his wrists. He collapsed, screaming in agony. I ignored the noise, pressing the cold edge of my blade against his throat. Tell me, I said, my voice flat. Where is Kinson? And what is the highest level transcender in this black market? The man glared at me, his eyes full of a desperate, suicidal loyalty. You think I'll talk? I'll never betray Boss Kinson. I sighed. Fine. Do you like barbecue? The man blinked, his scream dying in his throat. What? I gave him a kind, gentle smile. Then, I reached out and carved a thin slice of marbled meat from his own thigh. Before he could scream, I reached over and dislocated his jaw with a sickening pop. I snapped my fingers. A flicker of purple-red soul fire ignited in my palm. I held the meat over the flame until it turned black and charred, the smell of burnt fat filling the air. Sorry, I'm not much of a cook, I muttered, popping his jaw back into place. It's a bit burnt, but don't worry. You've got plenty of meat left. I'll get better with practice. The man's eyes bulged. He looked at the charred piece of himself, then at the madness in my eyes. He realized I wasn't joking. I was going to feed him to himself, piece by piece. Devil. You're a devil, he sobbed, his spirit finally snapping. I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. I paused, the burnt meat inches from his lips. He started babbling, the words pouring out like a broken dam. Kinson, he's in the center of the underground market. He's with Sister Chien. He's the strongest one here, but he hasn't fought in a long time. Last year he was already level 48. Once he finished, he looked at me with pleading eyes, dragging his useless limbs through the dirt. Just give me a quick death. Please. I had the information I needed. I wasn't the type to waste time on a broken tool. I swung my blade one last time, giving him the piece he begged for. I flicked a finger, sending a wave of fire across the clearing. Within seconds, the bodies and the evidence were nothing but ash. Level 48, huh? I frowned. That was a problem. Even if I went all out, I could probably only handle someone around level 40. If Kinson was level 48 a year ago, there was a good chance he had already hit level 50. If I wanted to kill him, I was going to need a better plan. Taking him head-on wasn't going to work. I needed to be smart. I needed to play dirty. Wait, a thought struck me. If I timed this perfectly, if I caught Kinson at the exact moment he was vulnerable, it didn't matter if he was level 48 or 58. I still had a shot. With my mind made up, I stepped back into the shadows to continue my slaughter. That night was destined to be a bloodbath for the Qingxing underground market. I moved through the darkness like a ghost. My steps were light, steady, and silent, the mark of a true hunter. With my Yang Beast Blade technique at level 95 and the boost from my instant dance, anyone below level 20 couldn't even survive a single strike. They became ghosts under my blade before they even knew I was there. For anyone over level 20, it just took a few more swings to finish the job. I felt like a man possessed. Every living thing in my sight was marked for death. After every kill, I flicked a finger, casting Night Fire Heaven Incineration. It was a full-service cremation. I left no bodies and not a single drop of spilled blood. All that remained were charred, human-shaped outlines on the ground, silent witnesses to the people who had been standing there seconds before. I ran into a few fighters over level 30, but they were helpless against me. How do you fight someone who refuses to die? I was a forbidden curse mage who traded life for power, spamming apocalyptic spells like they were cantrips. I used a life-for-life fighting style, forcing them into trades that would kill any normal person. I paid the price, of course. My body was a wreck. Several broken weapons were still lodged in my flesh. I looked like a vengeful Shura that had just crawled out of the deepest pit of hell. I kept pushing deeper, killing anyone who crossed me and demanding to know where Kensen was. But then, I hit a real wall. A man blocked my path. He was a level 42 awakened, and he stood there like a towering mountain. He wore black battle armor and gripped a massive great axe. His face was cold, his eyes sharp with a killing intent that made the air feel heavy. "You've got guts," the man said. His voice was deep and powerful, vibrating in my very soul. It's been a long, long time since anyone dared to cause trouble in the underground market alone. I stopped a few paces away, my guard up. I knew this guy was on a different level. He looked at me, at the swords and spears sticking out of my body, and I could see the confusion in his eyes. His name was Zhai Xiuqi, a top enforcer who had followed Kensen for years. He had seen everything, but he had never seen a freak like me. By all rights, I should have died 20 times over from those injuries. "Why aren't you dead yet?" Zhai Xiuqi asked, his voice tight with genuine curiosity. I looked at the giant axe in his hands and gave him a bloody grin. "Put the axe down, and I'll tell you." He tightened his grip. "Forget I asked. I'll find the answer myself." He wasn't falling for it. I was hoping to trick him into lowering his guard for a sneak attack, but he was a professional. Like a warrior who would never take off his mask, he would never let go of that axe. Zhai Xiuqi charged. The ground trembled with every stride. I didn't dare hold back. Forbidden Curse, Burning Reincarnation. Forbidden Curse, Instant Dance. I triggered both spells back-to-back, pushing my physical state to its absolute limit. "Humph, burning your own life force for power?" Zhai Xiuqi sneered. "How long can you possibly last?" He swung the great axe with the force of a falling star. I raised my blade, the sky-hanging trace, to block it. The impact sent a massive shockwave through my arms. I was thrown back, blood spraying from my mouth. Level 42 was no joke. Even with my blade skills at level 99 and 2 forbidden curses active, I was still being overpowered. But I had one advantage he didn't. I couldn't stay down. I wiped the blood from my chin and lunged back at him as if I were perfectly fine. Zhai Xiuqi's eyes widened. He couldn't believe a teenager could take a full power hit from him and keep coming. He didn't hold back a second time. His axe began to glow with a terrifying light. He swung again, even harder than before. I tried to parry, but the force was so great my blade was ripped from my hands and sent flying. The axe didn't stop. It slammed into my shoulder with a sickening crunch. I felt my collarbone and shoulder blade shatter instantly. The pain was white-hot. I was launched like a cannonball, smashing into a stone wall with enough force to crack it. Zhai Xiuqi stepped forward to finish me off, but I didn't wait for him to reach me. I bolted upright, ignoring my mangled shoulder. I raised my left hand, conjuring a ball of violet-red flame, while my right hand pointed toward the ceiling. Forbidden Curse, Night Fire Heaven Incineration. Forbidden Curse, World-Ending Mad Thunder. I poured everything I had into the lightning spell, sacrificing every bit of energy I could spare to summon the legendary Chaos Thunder. I knew my base level was only 16. A standard lightning bolt wouldn't scratch a guy like this. I needed the big guns. The massive ball of violet fire roared toward Zhai Xiuqi. He sensed the danger and didn't let it touch him. He brought his axe down in a vertical cleave, a brilliant light erupting from the blade. He sliced the fireball clean in half, the flames dissipating on either side of him without leaving a single mark on his armor. The violet fireball didn't even leave a scratch on him. Yahello stood there, unshaken, but the next second, the entire night sky seemed to tear open. A single bolt of lightning, thick as a man's arm and swirling with chaotic energy, descended from the heavens. Its colors shifted violently from deep purple to a raging crimson, looking like it contained every color in existence and none at all. The thunder was deafening. It felt like the world itself was trembling in fear. Yahello's pupils shrank. He sensed a level of danger he'd never felt before. He swung his massive axe with everything he had, desperate to parry the strike. But the lightning moved as if it had a mind of its own. It curved right around his blade and slammed directly into his chest. The force was cataclysmic. A power I had never witnessed before surged through him, threatening to rip his body into pieces. His axe flew from his hands, and he was sent spiraling backward, crashing into the dirt. He lay there, eyes wide with pure shock. He couldn't believe a kid my age could actually make him look this pathetic. I didn't give him a second to breathe. I lunged forward, grabbing my blade, Nebula Heaven's scar, and flickered across the distance in a blur. I brought the sword down in a heavy vertical cleave, aiming to end his life right then and there. Just as I thought I had him, Yahello threw his forearms up to block. A dull thud echoed as my blade struck his arms. The impact was so hard my entire arm went numb, vibrating with the force of the rebound. I stared at him, stunned. His black armor was glowing with a faint, eerie light, pulsing with a mysterious protective energy. I realized what it was immediately. Refined gear. Yahello looked at me, his eyes cold and murderous. He told me that his divine light black armor had been with him for years, and he had refined it to 7 stars. Its defense was legendary. My attacks had embarrassed him, sure, but they weren't enough to kill him. With a flick of his wrist, his fallen axe flew back into his hand. He swung it in a brutal, wide arc. The blade caught me across the midsection, literally gutting me. My internal organs spilled out onto the ground. I stumbled back, coughing up fountains of blood. I knew I was in deep trouble. In this world, you can refine equipment to boost its stats, adding stars with every success. A 7-star rare item is basically equal to epic tier gear. No wonder my Chaos Thunder hadn't finished him. If I couldn't break that armor, I couldn't win. What kind of monster are you? Yahello hissed. He was watching my guts hang out, yet I was still standing, still moving. It defied every law of nature. Hold on, I muttered, ignoring the hole in my stomach. Let me think. I scanned through my list of forbidden curses, looking for a solution. Then, I found it, a spell specifically designed to shatter high defense targets. I looked at his 7-star armor and smirked. Let's see how tough it really is. I began chanting the incantation for the forbidden curse, Eternal Gungold. Golden light began to pulse from my body. It was brilliant but strangely gentle, dyeing my entire form in a metallic sheen. As the energy poured out of me, I felt my face grow pale. The gold light spun rapidly in front of me, colliding and condensing until it formed a dazzling golden spear. It radiated an ancient, mysterious aura, the tip shimmering with a sharpness that felt like it could pierce through the fabric of reality itself. I reached out and gripped the spear. My gaze hardened. With a violent thrust, I sent the golden lance screaming through the air toward Yahello. This was a specialized curse. By sacrificing every trace of metallic elements within my own body, I could manifest a spear made of eternal gungold. It was unstoppable. I hadn't used it before because it was a single target spell with a long casting time, making it less practical than my lightning or fire. But against a human tank like this, it was perfect. Yahello watched the spear approach with a mix of confusion and doubt. He didn't know what it was, but he chose to trust his armor. He gripped his axe, channeled every drop of energy into his divine light black armor, and braced for the impact. The light from his armor intensified, forming a shimmering shield around him. When the spear hit, there was no explosion. There was no world-shaking shockwave. It was like a needle popping a balloon. The golden spear pierced through his legendary defense without a hint of resistance. The light shield shattered instantly. The spear drove through the armor and Zhai Xiuqi's body, leaving a clean, finger-sized hole straight through his chest. It wasn't a wide wound, but the psychological blow was fatal. Zhai Xiuqi stood there, dazed and trembling. Impossible, he whispered, his face pale with disbelief. That armor had protected him through countless wars and hundreds of battles, yet it had been bypassed like it was made of paper. The armor had never been damaged this badly before. While Zhai Xiuqi stood there in a daze, I didn't give him a second to breathe. I lunged forward, swinging my blade, the Nebula Sky Trace. I had stacked my Beast Slayer technique to 99 layers, and every strike was aimed at a vital point. I hacked at him relentlessly, forcing him back step after step. Zhai Xiuqi's mind was a mess. He couldn't mount a proper defense. But as we fought, he noticed something that terrified him even more than my blade. I had been fighting him for a long time now, and the blood-red flames of my forbidden curse were still burning brightly around me. That meant I was constantly sacrificing my life force. By all logic, I should have been a shriveled corpse by now. Kid, are you really immortal? Zhai Xiuqi's voice was a mix of shock and fury. He must have been wondering what kind of monster his boss, Kinsun, had picked a fight with. Not only was I burning my life away without dying, but all the wounds he had carved into my body didn't seem to slow me down at all. I was perfectly fine. It was unnatural. I didn't bother answering. Instead, I raised my hand and unleashed another forbidden curse. World-ending mad thunder. The familiar chaotic lightning crashed down from the sky. I wasn't holding back. I poured everything into the attack. His divine light black armor was already cracked from my spear, and the lightning surged through those jagged openings, tearing his body apart from the inside. Zhai Xiuqi roared in pain. He knew that if this continued, he was actually going to die at the hands of a student. But he was a man who had crawled out of pits of corpses. The threat of death didn't make him panic, it made him cold. He swung his massive battle axe with renewed precision, his sheer strength pushing me back into a defensive position. Every hit felt like a mountain falling on me. I wasn't about to let him regain momentum. I raised my hand again, manifesting another spear of eternal gun gold. The golden streak screamed toward him. This time, Zhai Xiuqi wasn't arrogant enough to take it head-on. His eyes flashed with a sharp light, and his body blurred. Phantom Shadow Shield. For a man of his size, his speed was impossible. He moved so fast he left an afterimage behind, dodging my golden spear entirely. I didn't even have time to react before he was right in my face. His axe moved like a flash of lightning. A cold sensation washed over my neck. My head flew high into the air. It bounced once and rolled across the dirt, my face frozen in a mask of shock. My headless body just stood there, swaying slightly in the center of the clearing. Zhai Xiuqi stood back, panting heavily. That single strike had taken everything he had left. Huh, I took your head off, he wheezed, leaning on his axe. I don't believe you can survive that. He let out a long breath of relief. Only he knew how close he had come to losing. But just as he thought it was over, a starlight-dusted blade pierced through his back. It slid through his chest and punctured his heart without warning, shattering his remaining life force. Zhai Xiuqi turned his head in slow motion, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had let his guard down completely. Behind him stood my headless body, still holding the sword. The body calmly walked over to where my head lay, picked it up, and lined it up with the stump of my neck. With a wet click, I popped my head back on. You're strong, I said, my voice steady as I pulled the blade out of his chest. But you were too careless. Blood poured from his wound. Zhai Xiuqi stared at me with pure, unadulterated rage. Careless? You really are an immortal monster. He realized then that his death wasn't a fluke. No one expects a man they just decapitated to walk up and stab them in the back. He didn't waste his final breaths cursing me. Instead, he used his last bit of strength to roll over and look toward the dark horizon, toward the heart of the black market. Boss Kinsun, run, he's a monster. I didn't let him finish. I swung my blade and ended his life. With Zhai Xiuqi dead, the rest of the path was clear. He was clearly the strongest fighter Kinsun had. Following the directions I'd gathered, I soon found myself outside a private room. Hearing the muffled voices inside, I breathed a sigh of relief. I was just in time. I crouched under the window, waiting. I needed Kinsen's guard to be at its absolute lowest. He probably never imagined a level 16 kid would have the guts to hunt him down alone. I waited patiently, even tapping my fingers to the rhythm of the noise inside, like a hunter waiting for the perfect shot. Suddenly, the noise stopped. Kinsen let out a sharp shout of surprise. That was my cue. I gripped the nebula sky trace, activated my burning reincarnation and instant dance, and smashed through the entrance. "Who's there?" Kinsen roared. He was the king of the underground for a reason. His instincts were sharp. He spotted me instantly. But I was faster. My blade moved like a shooting star across the night sky. Even with Kinsen's quick reflexes, he couldn't dodge completely. The blade sheared through his left arm at the elbow. The cut was as smooth as a mirror, and blood sprayed across the room. Kinsen screamed, stumbling back in horror. A woman in the room, Qian, froze in terror before scrambling to find a way out. I didn't care about her. She wouldn't get far with my spirits guarding the perimeter. I frowned at Kinsen. I was disappointed the strike hadn't killed him instantly, but taking an arm would weaken him enough. If one strike wasn't enough, I'd just keep swinging. Kinsen slapped a switch, and the lights flooded the room. He finally saw my face. "You Yilin? The student who killed Su Jihua." He was trembling with rage. "How are you here? Where is Zhai Xiuqi?" "They're all dead," I said, raising my sword. "And you're next." "Dead? You little brat, you think you're qualified to kill me." Kinsen was a hardened criminal. Even with one arm gone, he didn't crumble. He roared, stepping forward with a massive, heavy punch. The force was incredible. It slammed into me, sending me flying back until I was literally embedded in the wall. Kinsen's eyes burned with a cold, murderous intent. He wasn't going down without a fight. I hacked and coughed, blood splattering the floor. Kinsen was a level 50 berserker, and even with one arm missing, he was a monster. High school students like me weren't supposed to even touch someone like him. My chest was a mess of crushed bone and shredded muscle. Every breath sent a jagged rib stabbing into my lungs. The pain was distracting, so I made a choice. I sacrificed my own lungs to fuel a forbidden curse. Secret chamber wild thunder. I warred. A bolt of concentrated golden lightning streaked toward him. Kinsen didn't flinch. He swung his remaining fist with savage fury, shattering my lightning into a million harmless sparks. Then he moved. He was like a mountain collapsing toward me. Before I could react, he slammed into me, driving my body deep into the floor. The impact left a human-shaped crater in the concrete. He didn't stop there. He brought his heavy boot down on my head. I heard the sickening crunch of my own skull fracturing. Kinsen stepped back, satisfied that I was dead. He walked to his liquor cabinet, grabbed a bottle of white spirits, and poured it over his bloody stump. He hissed through his teeth, veins bulging in his forehead as the alcohol burned. He lit a cigar, letting the nicotine dull the agony. He looked at his severed arm lying on the floor. If he found a high-level healer soon, he could still have it reattached. But as he bent down to pick it up, a golden spear of light streaked through the air. It pinned his remaining hand to the floor. A second later, my blade flashed. Kinsen's right arm was severed clean at the shoulder. "What? How are you still alive?" Kinsen screamed, staring at me in pure horror. He had literally stepped on my brain. I shouldn't have been breathing, let alone standing. "Are you immortal?" "Sorry," I said, wiping blood from my face. "My class is Forbidden Curse Master. I have a curse called Eternal Immortality. By sacrificing 2.5 years of my life, I can ignore a fatal blow." I lied to him with a straight face. I wanted him to think I had a limit. With both his arms gone, I figured the fight was over. I was wrong. Kinsen lunged forward and delivered a devastating kick to my jaw. I went airborne. "Eternal immortality? Let's see how many lives you have." Kinsen roared. Even without arms, he was terrifying. He leaped into the air and slammed a heavy roundhouse kick into my ribs, sending me crashing into the ground like a cannonball. He landed on top of me, stomping repeatedly. A level 50 berserker didn't need skills to kill a level 16 student. Every kick was a death sentence. "You're too young, kid." Kinsen spat. "Rule number 1 of combat. Never tell your enemy your secrets until they're dead. I'll see just how many years of life you have to burn." He turned my body into a pulp. My twin yin-yang bracelets glowed. desperately trying to knit my flesh back together, but he was destroying me faster than they could heal. Soon, I was nothing but a mess of mangled meat and white bone fragments. Kinson finally stopped, panting and drenched in sweat. He had delivered over 100 fatal blows. He didn't believe anyone could survive that. He turned to walk away, cursing under his breath about how embarrassing it was to be maimed by a brat. Then, he felt a sudden chill. He spun around just as a silver arc of light cut through the air. His left leg flew into the sky. Kinson froze, balancing on one leg, staring at me with a face full of blank confusion. Surprised? I grinned, my body fully restored. I lied. You're too young, Kinson. Why would you believe anything an enemy says? He was down to one leg and 0 arms. I had him. But instead of giving up, Kinson delivered a brutal headbutt that left me seeing stars. Then, he used his one remaining leg to hop away, fleeing in total terror. He realized he was fighting a monster he couldn't kill. Trying to run? I muttered. Forbidden curse. Eye of the surge. I sacrificed my own eyeballs. Everything went black. But in that final moment of vision, I locked onto his leg. Ice crystals erupted around Kinson's foot, freezing him solid to the floor. He thrashed, but without arms or a second leg to balance, he was stuck. When my vision returned, I picked up my blade and walked toward him. The tip of my sword scraped against the floor, sparking against the stone. Where is Ji-Fu? I asked. I had searched the building, but the man was nowhere to be found. Kinson bit his lip, refusing to talk. I snapped my fingers. A flicker of purple-red flame landed on his severed left arm, turning it to ash in seconds. No, Kinson shrieked. Without the limb, he could never be whole again. From now on, you're just one-armed Kinson, I said coldly. If I tell you, Kinson gasped, his eyes bloodshot with rage. Will you let me live? I looked at Kinson and gave him a faint, calm smile. You know, I like to tell the truth, I said. I only came here to save Uncle G. If I kill your subordinates, I can get away with it because you'll cover it up. But if I kill you, the king of Qingqing's underworld, that's a massive problem. I'm not stupid enough to invite that kind of chaos. I paused, letting the coldness seep into my eyes. But just because I'm wary of the fallout doesn't mean I won't do it. Uncle G has been very good to me. Don't push an honest man too far. Kinson hesitated. He was missing 3 limbs, and his last remaining leg was frozen solid in a block of ice. He had no cards left to play. He had to believe me. Fine, Kinson gasped. The old man isn't dead. He just lost a hand. He's locked in the cells outside. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. If Ji-Fu had died, I would have felt a heavy weight of guilt. Whatever his ulterior motives were for helping me, he had spent real money and resources to back me up. Kindness like that had to be repaid. Suddenly, my blade, Nebula Eternal, flashed like a streak of starlight. I swung it straight for Kinson's neck. I was going for the decapitation. Kinson's hair stood on end as he felt the killing intent. You lied to me. You animal, he screamed. In a desperate burst of survival instinct, he didn't even care about his last leg anymore. He twisted his torso with everything he had. His frozen leg snapped off with a sickening crack, and he rolled across the floor, pathetic and mangled, but alive. He had actually dodged my lethal strike. I didn't give him a second to breathe. I raised my sword again. I couldn't let anyone who knew the secret of my immortality leave this room alive. Kinson was now just a torso, completely helpless. He closed his eyes, a bitter smile on his face. He never thought a legendary underworld king would die at the hands of a high school student. Stop. Let him go, or I'll kill Ji-Fu right now. A sharp voice rang out from the doorway. It was Sister Qian. She had fled earlier, but now she was back, and she wasn't alone. She was dragging Ji-Fu with her. Ji-Fu looked terrible. He had clearly been beaten, and his face was deathly pale from blood loss. He was tied up like a sack of grain, his mouth gagged so he couldn't make a sound. Sister Qian held a black pistol tightly against his temple. Brother son, she cried out, her eyes filling with tears when she saw Kinson's mangled state. I told you to run. Kinson roared, his voice a mix of shock and fury. Why did you come back? Get out of here. I don't need you to save me. No, I'm not leaving you behind. She pressed the gun harder against Ji-Fu's head. Let Brother Sun go, or I pull the trigger. You idiot. Kinson's eyes turned red. I never loved you. Why are you doing this? He hadn't shed a single tear when I hacked off his limbs, but seeing this woman risk her life for him broke his composure. In the darkest moments, you finally realize who is real and who is a ghost. He never expected Sister Qian to be the one to return. I narrowed my eyes, tapping my fingers against the hilt of my sword. If I activated my skills, Burning Reincarnation and Flash Dance, I had a 60% chance of cutting her hand off before she could fire. I debated the odds. 60% wasn't high enough when Ji Fu's life was on the line. I decided to fold. What do you want? I asked. An exchange of hostages? No way, she snapped, her voice trembling but determined. If I give him up, you'll kill us both instantly. Let Brother Sen's men take him away first. I'll stay here with the hostage until he's safe. I frowned. She was sharp. If I let Kinson go, I'd be letting a tiger return to the mountains. Without the element of surprise I had tonight, I'd never get near him again. Kinson started screaming at her to leave, his frantic shouting giving me a headache. I grabbed a nearby object from the bed, a double-headed toy, and shoved it into his mouth. He gagged and choked, unable to speak another word. I looked back at Sister Qian. I can't agree to that. If Kinson leaves, he'll just call in an army to wipe us out. Neither I nor Uncle G would survive the night. You want to save your person, and I want to save mine. I turned my sword around, pointing the blade at myself. If you're worried I'll chase you down, I'll give you some peace of mind. For flashes of cold light followed. I sliced through the tendons in my own wrists and ankles. Blood sprayed across the floor. I collapsed into a heap, unable to even crawl. But I wasn't done. I took the blade and drove it into my own stomach, pulling it across until my intestines began to spill out. There, I wheezed, my face turning ghostly white. Now do you believe I won't be chasing anyone? Sister Qian covered her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. She couldn't comprehend how anyone could do that to themselves. Uncle G is important to me, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I'm an orphan. He stepped into my life like a father. I have to make sure he's safe. Behind the gag, Ji Fu's eyes welled up with tears. He had spent his life in the cold, heartless world of business, but this raw display of loyalty moved him more than any mountain of gold ever could. Seeing me mutilated and dying on the floor, Sister Qian finally lowered her gun. Kinson thrashed wildly, trying to scream a warning. He knew I had survived being crushed into pulp earlier. These wounds were nothing to me. But with the gag in his mouth, he couldn't tell her. Sister Qian ignored his muffled grunts, thinking he was just calling out to her in distress. She shoved Ji Fu aside and ran toward Kinson. Brother Sun, I've got you. She reached him and pulled the gag out of his mouth. Kinson's face was full of despair. He looked past her, and she followed his gaze. I was standing up. I was casually stuffing my intestines back into my stomach as I walked toward them. If you want to kill me, fine, Kinson pleaded, his voice breaking. But please, let her go. She isn't a combatant. She doesn't know anything. She's not a threat to you. I've never begged for anything in my life, but I'm begging you now. Sister Qian backed away, her face drained of color. How are you standing? I saw you cut your own tendons. Not only was I standing, but I was holding a blade. I looked at Kinson, my mind a mess of conflicting emotions. In a different life, Kinson might have been a man I respected. He was loyal, brave, and clearly loved the woman beside him. But I didn't have the luxury of choice. My immortality was a secret that had to stay buried. If the world found out what I truly was, my fate would be 10,000 times worse than Kinson's. I raised my sword, Nebula Heaven's Trace, without a flicker of emotion on my face. Please, let Sister Qian go. Kinson begged, his voice cracking. I'll give you anything. Money, power, just let her live. A flash of starlight streaked through the air. Kinson's voice cut off abruptly. The underground king's eyes stayed wide, staring at nothing as the light faded from them. He died without even getting to close his eyes. Brother Sun, Sister Qian let out a piercing scream. She collapsed over his body, her face drenched in tears, sobbing hysterically. I'm sorry, Brother Sun. I'm useless. I was so stupid. Suddenly, her expression twisted into something monstrous. She grabbed her gun and aimed it straight at my head, pulling the trigger over and over. Asterisk bang, bang, bang. Asterisk 6 shots rang out in rapid succession until the chamber was empty and the barrel smoked. I didn't even blink. I swung Nebula Heaven's trace, the blade moving like a blur of starlight, deflecting every single bullet. To be honest, I didn't need to block them. I wouldn't have died anyway. But with Jifu watching, I had to put on a show of martial skill. Kill me too, Sister Chin screamed, her voice raw. If I can't have revenge, I just want to be with him. I shook my head and let out a long sigh. Stop it. I don't want to kill you. Just go. Sister Chin froze, stunned by my words. I looked at Kinson's body and felt a twinge of pity. I just want you to fix that soft heart of yours. You can be kind to your own people, but once someone is an enemy, they are already dead. I'll remember your teachings, I said softly. We approached the edge of the black market, but Jifu suddenly stopped, his face turning pale. The exit was blocked. Dozens of white, skeletal warriors stood guard, their eye sockets glowing with eerie green soul fire. Behind them were dull-headed knights, and even a bone dragon. The skeletons held rusted blades stained with fresh blood. Is Kinson's backup already here? Jifu hissed, his eyes turning fierce. Yilin, if things get bad, leave me. Save yourself. I can't do that, I shouted, acting shocked. Jifu started to argue, but he didn't see the skeleton warrior creeping up behind me. Yilin, watch out, he screamed, lunging forward to push me out of the way. The skeleton swung a heavy fist, connecting squarely with Jifu's jaw. He went down instantly, knocked unconscious. I stood over him and rubbed my nose, feeling a bit guilty. Sorry, Uncle G. I didn't want to do that, but I can't have you watching what comes next. The secret of my immortal body was too big to share. And as for everyone else in this underground market, I didn't plan on letting a single soul leave alive. I raised my hand, activating the forbidden curse. Sacrifice. Instantly, the blood was sucked out of my veins. My skin shriveled, clinging to my bones until I looked like a dried-up corpse. But a split second later, my immortality kicked in. My heart hammered, regenerating fresh blood in a heartbeat. My body filled out, then shriveled again as I fed the curse more. I toggled between living man and walking corpse, over and over, stacking the power of the curse to a level this world had never seen. I kept toggling my life force, draining and regenerating in a violent cycle. The purple-red flame in my hand grew larger and more terrifying with every second. It transformed into a miniature sun, glowing so brightly it hurt to look at. The heat was unbearable. I could feel the power vibrating against my palm, straining to break free from my control. I couldn't hold it back any longer. I took a deep breath and hurled the solar sphere toward the heart of the underground market. It streaked through the air like a dying comet, trailing a long, jagged wake of purple light. When it hit the ground, the world turned white. A massive explosion shook the earth. A towering mushroom cloud rose into the sky, swallowing the darkness. The heat was absolute, turning the air into a furnace that melted everything it touched. I heard screams, horrible, high-pitched shrieks of the monsters and thugs caught in the blast, but they were cut short in an instant. They didn't even have time to turn to ash. They just ceased to exist. The city's most notorious den of sin was gone, replaced by a roaring sea of fire. I stood there, watching the flames dance. My face felt hot, the flickering light casting long shadows across the ruins. My mind was a mess. I found a discarded pack of cigarettes on the ground, lit one using a stray spark from the fire, and took a long drag. I tossed the rest of the pack into the inferno. The bitter smoke filled my lungs, and for the first time tonight, my heart rate slowed down. It was a strange thought. I was just a level 16 high school student. I had just single-handedly assassinated Kinson, the king of the underground, and leveled his entire empire. If I told anyone, they'd think I was insane. The authorities would never suspect a kid like me. It was like someone blaming a random viewer behind a screen for the assassination of a world leader. It was too impossible to be true. I looked down at Ji Fu, who was still unconscious at my feet. He was the only problem left. He was the only witness who had seen me fight. A dark thought crossed my mind. If I killed him now, then went after Ji Lingyu, I could finish them both. I could wound myself, lie down next to them, and play the victim. Everyone would assume Kinsun attacked the Ji family, and then the mysterious Lin Yi showed up to wipe everyone out. I would be the sole, tragic survivor. I gripped my blade, Xingyan Tianan. The starlight on the edge shimmered coldly. I raised the weapon, my eyes narrowing as I prepared to strike. Right then, Ji Fu's eyes fluttered open. He gasped, staring straight at the sharp edge of my sword hovering inches from his face. Yilin? What are you doing? I didn't flinch. My hand moved in a blur of silver light. Slash, slash, slash. A second later, I held out a perfectly peeled, bright red apple. Uncle Ji, you look hungry. Want a snack? I blinked at him, putting on my best innocent, harmless expression. Ji Fu let out a long, shaky breath, his chest heaving with relief. Yilin, you scared the life out of me. Who eats apples at a time like this? He sat up and looked at the raging fire behind us, his face pale with terror. What happened? Where are the skeletons? They tried to kill us, I said, quickly covering my mouth as if I'd said too much. But then that mysterious guy, he showed up. He saved us and set the whole place on fire. Ji Fu's eyes gleamed. I could see him thinking. He clearly thought I was just a naive kid who couldn't keep a secret to save his life. He probably thought he'd have to teach me how to keep my mouth shut later. A mysterious powerhouse named Lin Yi. He muttered, shaking his head. I've never heard of him. But it doesn't matter. We're alive. We need to move, now? The Bureau of Investigation will be here any minute, and I need to get back to make preparations.